Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dabular once again.
Hello.
How's everybody doing today? Pleasure to see you all here this afternoon. Gloomy Charlie Brown weather kind of day here
up there
in upstate
too,
New
huh?
York. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
Peanuts weather.
I'm loving it, man. I'm loving
Yeah.
it. I love gray, autumnal, rainy kind of days.
Yeah.
So I call Catcher in the Rye days.
Yeah.
You get days like that in Manhattan. You just want to go to the Museum of Natural History and ask someone where the ducks go in the winter.
Yeah, what's nice about that weather is you kind of feel like you're accomplishing something by going outside. It's kind of like it's just annoying enough to the point where you feel like you're weathering a certain storm, you're accomplishing a certain feat getting from point A to point B, while you're relieved when you get to wherever your destination is. Like a bright spring day that's 70 degrees out, you kind of feel guilty staying inside and doing a podcast. But this is good podcast weather.
It is good podcast weather, but I'll go and take my walk later. I like this shit.
Yeah, it is fun. I took a walk before the show. My the office at my complex has free coffee and tea. That's part of why we moved here. And so I just walked to get a cup of tea. Mm-hmm.
Honey, we'll
That's
save
right.
about 12 cents a day.
Yeah,
Not
right,
making
exactly.
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't replaced the half and half though in a while. I think the half and half is expired. They got to do something about that. I got to write to them. Maybe I should hang a hammer and sickle flag from my porch, organize a rent strike at the complex. I always thought that would be a funny idea for a movie, like a Coen Brothers type movie, like a devout communist moves into this sort of like, benign suburban complex and just starts a rent strike. Just stirs the pot. Just starts shit. For no reason.
Well,
Not like the company is
no,
negligent
you should
or
do it
or
over the half and
lousy.
half. There's
Over
a
the half
scene
and
like
half. There
that.
you go.
No, there's a
Yeah.
scene like that in Potemkin where the sailors free the half and half.
Yeah, right, exactly.
From the forward hatch. Yeah.
That would be a great. Yeah, see, that's funny. See, now we're workshopping it. You pick a very minor grievance and you start a rent strike over that. Yeah, and then even after they cave on that minor grievance, you keep it going. I like that idea. Hey, we got a nice crowd in here today. 502 strong in the Rumble chat to start the show. 446 over on YouTube. Smash that like button. Let's get a crowd in here. Smash that follow button. Smash that subscribe button. We got a lot to do today. Not many segments, but our segments are
very meaty.
big, fat, and girthy. Yeah, exactly.
Fat and girthy, like Luigi Mangione, according to him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
As we'll
according to him.
see in our reporting
Yes.
later.
All right. So let's get
CBS
going.
didn't cover that angle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Time to work out.
Here we go.
Time
Getting
to sing
started.
for our suppers.
That's right.
Okay, so Dr. Alex Karp came out white hot at the Reagan National Defense Forum today, according to Jack Prescott here, who, look, I took Keaton to the woodshed about his reading of, various movements, being gay movements, most specifically MAGA. But this guy, Jack Prescott, is definitely gay for Alex Karp. If you go to his X account, he definitely wants to hook up with him on some kind of Grindr app. He was at the Reagan National Defense Forum today, and it just kept getting better and better. Every time he spoke was a mic drop moment. Yes, people all around the world dropping their mics in horror that somebody could get the entire history of America this wrong. Alex Karp is one of the most important people in the entire world. Well, that is true, but not for any good reason at all. All right, so let's hear.
When one of the most important people in the entire world is someone almost no one knows anything about, that's a sign that that's not a good thing.
Well, the simps do. Simps do. And what really comes up here is very much like Mark Andreessen. He tries to tie policy prescriptions and objectives that are very good to for defense contractors, for financiers, for people who really don't want any oversight. Now, he's really trying to make a MAGA pitch for the deep state. How will MAGA push back against people like this? We'll see. But I hope this segment enlightens people about who these folks really are and why they want to call everything woke that might restrain their profits.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know that if you're waking up and thinking about harming American citizens, or if American citizens are taken hostage and kept in dungeons, or if you're a foreign power sending fentanyl to poison our people, something really bad is going to happen to you and your friends and your cousins and your bank account and your mistress and whoever was involved. And, you know, when Americans are spending $1 trillion on defense, what I want and what I think my peers want is, why are these people keeping our citizens hostage, torturing our people, attacking our allies, maligning us in what was once called the United Nations, basically a discriminatory institution against anything good? We need to stand up, and those people need to be scared. And that's why this conference is so important, because we have the best products in the world, and we cannot have parity. Our adversaries do not have our moral compunction. If it's even, they will take advantage of our niceness, kindness, our desire to be at home in Nebraska or New Hampshire or wherever we live in our peaceful environments. And they need to wake up scared and go to bed scared. And if you give that to the American people will go back and say, and honestly, probably shouldn't say this is why I thought the Democrats were going to lose the election, why they did, because people want to live in peace. They want to go home. They do not want to hear your woke pagan ideology. They want to know they're safe. And safe means that the other person is scared. That's how you make someone safe. And the average American person understands this. Unfortunately, many of the intellectually captured institutions, funneled and intellectually owned by the Berkeley faculty, do not. And that's what they want. It's sure as hell what I want. And that's what Palantir and all the people in this room, I hope, we're here to serve the American people. And my version of service is the soldiers are happier, the enemies are scared, and Americans go back to enjoying the fact that we're the only one with a real tech scene in this country, and we're going to win everything. That's how I see it.
You know, as Reagan said, peace through terror. That was his main slogan, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. That is like 7 layers of crazy stacked on top of another 14.
Yeah,
that was just a remarkable monologue. Now, on the one hand, you can really see how so much of MAGA, so much of the quote unquote alt-right is really not very alt. This is really standard boilerplate, attack the eggheads and intellectuals and academics in order to justify warmongering and savagery, and the idea that trying to sell the idea that we just want peace here in America, but those people out there, the not white ones, they're crazy. Those people are crazy. We have no choice but to flex this military muscle. The idea that someone would say, as we will see, that the problem in the world is that people have not been terrorized enough by the American military, and they're not going to bed scared of what crazy shit they might wake up to that the United States decided to do by fiat, having a military that is magnitudes of order larger than anybody else's so that nobody can really feasibly stop us.
Those
The idea that the world needs
Cambodians,
to be more scared of us
those
than they already are.
Afghans, those Iraqis, those Syrians,
Those Cambodians.
those Cambodians, those Palestinians, they are just taking advantage of our niceness.
Yep, they really are. All right, so he is the CEO and one of the founders of Palantir. So who is Palantir? Palantir Technologies builds and deploys software platforms for the intelligence community to assist in counterterrorism investigations and operations in the United States, the United Kingdom, and internationally. Okay, so they're deep state spooks. That's what this corporation is. They're deep state spooks. Now, the people among MAGA who are, have a broader, more geopolitical perspective. Now, last I heard, they're very against the deep state. The same people who are very anti-woke, as he's playing on here with your woke paganism. So it's woke paganism to be against the deep state. You see, this is how they're going to try to manipulate that movement into supporting what they're ostensibly supposed to be against. And I will say, if you look at a lot of the feedback on that tweet, unlike the libs, some people have pointed this out and I agree, the libs will just swallow anything. They are really the Orwellian. Yesterday we were at war with Oceania. Today we're at war with East Asia, and they will just swallow it. Right. MAGA is not so easy to do that with. We saw the pushback that they got about Luigi, where Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh were trying to spin it, and they were getting a lot of pushback from MAGA. This did get a lot of pushback, I will say, but not from everybody. All right, so this is a deep state company that assists spooks in using AI to target people, and sometimes the military to literally target people. If you look at who founded it, right at the top there, someone you probably heard of, Mr. Peter Thiel, somebody who also likes to speak out against wokeness. But there's one kind of wokeness that Peter Thiel never really speaks out about, and that's Zionist wokeness, the idea of Jews as a special protected category, or I should say Zionists. But we'll get to that. All right, so why would Alex Karp want to gin up this very muscular foreign policy, this very deep state-oriented foreign policy, and brand it as woke? Well, Palantir wins a $100 million U.S. contract for AI targeting tech, and that's not all. Maven Smart System draws on U.S. intelligence data and uses computer vision algorithms and AI-enabled software from other companies to help make sense of a situation and to find adversaries. The U.S. military has used this system to help identify targets for airstrikes in the Middle East this year, Bloomberg has reported. Shannon Clark, head of defense growth at Palantir, said the contract would extend access to Maven's smart system to all 5 U.S. military services, the Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, and Space Force, expanding the platform to tens of thousands more service members. It's like nobody saw Terminator.
Yeah.
Selected units in specific locations so far have had access to the system, she said. Palantir in May won a $480 million contract. So this $100 million is on top of the $480 million to extend Maven Smart System to combatant commands, which run military operations in specific locations. Maven, which relies on multiple contractors and AI providers alongside Palantir, started as a project in 2017 and is now a program of record mostly run by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. The Defense Department has released little information about how Maven is used operationally. Bloomberg has reported the U.S. has relied on it to offer targeting support to Ukraine, as well as for American operations in Yemen, Iraq, and Sudan. U.S. defense officials have defended the department's use of computer vision and other machine learning algorithms to inform such targeting decisions, arguing that it ultimately falls to humans to make decisions about battlefield actions. Some experts argue the system could encourage human operators to give undue trust to such machines, however. An advisory body convened by the United Nations on Thursday called on countries to limit military use of AI to prevent human rights violations and a possible new arms race. Now, you might remember a few months ago, there was a kind of mini scandal. It made the front pages that they were using AI to target Palestinians in Gaza. So somebody confronted Peter Thiel about this. Now, this is other money that they get from their defense contracting. User-centered machine learning, a $99.2 million contract with the U.S. Army for research and development on UCML. The contract is expected to be completed by September 12, 2029. And U.S. Special Operations Command, a $36.8 million contract to serve as the lead software integrator to USSOCOM's Mission Command System. The contract includes pilot projects to implement Palantir's AI capabilities. So a young lady confronted Peter Thiel about the Israeli army's use of their AI for targeting. And, you know, on top of the fact that his company literally has hundreds of millions of dollars at stake in continuing these programs, it also seems, I don't know, you know, maybe he took a little trip to Epstein Island or something, but boy, did he panic when he got asked this question.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets? And secondly, do you agree with Elon Musk about that the population decline is a risk for humanity?
Look, I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge, and I think that's just simply absurd. And so I'm not going to concede that point. And what was the other?
I love how he says, and what was your other question? I love how he chose to answer the hard one, even though he was so nervous about answering it. She asked him too. He could have gone for the second one first and then be like, oh, sorry, I only have time for that one.
That was spoken like a man who has every reason to believe the Mossad has a vault full of compromise on him that they're going to release at the moment he gets a little disobedient on a stage. He seemed terrified. Well, I'm not. Why is he so scared, man? Why are you so scared? When you got that kind of money, there's not a lot for you to be scared of, and the things there are for you to be scared of are things we can't talk about on YouTube. So let's talk about his claim on the face of it that the problem is we haven't terrorized the world enough. Global victims of U.S. military aggression. The most severe of the U.S.'s acts of aggression have resulted in some 13 to 23 million deaths in at least 28 nations. Direct U.S. military actions in at least 16 countries have caused around 7 to 13 million deaths. U.S. supported or instigated armed conflicts in 19 countries have led to some 6 to 10 million deaths. There are countries where the U.S. has engaged both directly in combat and indirectly through active military support. These figures still do not include casualties from all the governments the U.S. has supported militarily in their domestic conflicts against supposed insurgents and other political opposition. Many tens of thousands more have been killed by client states with U.S. support and using U.S. funded and supplied war material, such as in the Philippines. These extensive casualties underscore the high human cost of the U.S.'s militarist strategy for maintaining its global hegemony. Ensuring the political subservience of governments to conform with U.S. geopolitical objectives and ensuring access to countries' economic and natural resources are essential to do this. Understand, this is why I keep saying Trump's victory is not the storming of the Bastille. It's not for you. This has nothing to do with you. It's not going to do anything for you. This is about one group of hegemons who are profiting greatly from the U.S. foreign policy being described here, from equipping it, from funding it, from benefiting from the stolen resources, and another faction within that same system that wants to take over and profit from the same system. That's why when you see these guys talk about what they want to do, they don't talk about a more peaceful world. They talk about a less peaceful world. The problem is we're not being hard enough on the rest of the world.
Yeah, this is basically like the Upper East Side versus the Upper West Side.
That's it. Right.
Right. There's nothing in it for Brooklyn.
No. As it is, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute reports U.S. military spending of $916 billion in 2023 to be the largest in the world. This is over triple the next biggest spender, China's $296 billion, and more than that of the following 20 countries combined: Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Germany, Ukraine, France, Japan, South Korea, Italy, Australia, Poland, Israel, Canada, Spain, Brazil, Algeria, Netherlands, Taiwan, and Turkey. Wow, Russia, that existential threat to our well-being, is not even in third place. It's lumped in with the 20 countries that combined don't equal our military spending. All right, so this is an interesting graphic they did here. Victims of U.S. military aggression since 1946, 23.2 million people. Let's see some of the countries that have most benefited from our gracious visitations in their fair lands. Vietnam, of course, 5.1 million. Korea, 4.5 million. The Congo, didn't realize that, 1967, 3.3 million. Iraq, you'd expect that, 3.1 million. Indonesia, 3 million. Yeah, you know, Keaton, I think the problem is we have not terrorized the world enough.
Yeah,
the world is not going to sleep. Yeah, they're getting too comfortable. They're getting cocky.
Yeah.
Every day without fear of an American bomb is another day that they might choose an alternative currency. So here's an infographic from Al Jazeera of U.S. military bases around the world. You know, why did these people put their country so close to our military bases? Look at all of these bases. Oh, I wonder why China gets so nervous about our intentions. What with South Korea having 73 bases, Japan having 120, Australia having 7, and their own bases basically function as ours in the end. Look, we've got China surrounded. So here is an overall breakdown. Now, I've seen different numbers on this, but they all land around between this. 780 is the highest estimate I've seen. But approximately the U.S. has 742 military bases in 82 countries and territories. Okay, so God, man, I mean, China, Russia, these countries are such a threat to us. So we have 742 military bases overseas. How many do they have? Oh, Russia has 52. In 12 countries. Wait, what are we in? 82 countries?
Wow, look at that.
They're in 12 countries? Huh. Look at us. Look at them. How about China? China, our new arch nemesis. Oh, they only have 29 military bases in 3 countries.
Wow.
Do you understand how propagandized we are that we're told that these are the countries that are warmongering?
Right, that are threatening
these
world
are
peace.
the countries that are threatening world peace? 742, 52, 29. 29. So one person who really liked this, the guy who's coming to save everybody, the guy who's coming to bring sense back to government, Elon Musk, with his very typical one-word retweet, based. Based. He thinks it's really, really based. So why do you think Elon thinks this absolutely deranged ahistorical monologue was based? Now are you starting to get the picture? They want you getting very, very, very angry about who's going to pee where on Capitol Hill. So while you're looking there, this is what they're doing. So Tesla, that's chump change, 352,000 in contracts with the government. SpaceX, though, wow, that's a lot of money. Now 15.4 billion. Now you're talking about real money. 3.6 billion of which comes from Department of Defense. That is real money there. Now in services that they provide, they don't break down defense versus NASA here, but SpaceX gets another $2.2 billion in services split between NASA and defense. Tesla also gets some of that money. Now, there were your simps who reacted to this predictably. In Washington and much of the Western world, everything in foreign policy is supposed to be a proportionate response. That is 100% not correct. A crushing, embarrassing defeat is needed. Yeah, we have not crushed and pulverized the world, both directly and through our proxies. That's the problem. They just haven't gotten the message yet that we're prepared to commit wholesale slaughter on an unimaginable scale at the slightest provocation. The world has not gotten the message.
Well, the amazing thing about this is that, like, while, yes, we have racked up a lot of corpses underneath our army boots, we have not won a strategic victory anywhere in a very long time. And these people read this as, well, that's because we're being too soft.
We're being too soft.
Could be for no other reason.
It's not that we're being too stupid.
Right.
A great president is feared by our enemies, respected by our friends. That is Trump. That is why all over the world our enemies are trying to cozy up to Trump or simply shut up and pretend they are invisible. Yeah, I mean, they were pretty much doing that before. It doesn't matter who the president is. They know that America may do some crazy shit on any given day. America needs to leave the UN and NATO. Finally, someone understands that 1, fear is the only language some cultures understand. 2, not all cultures share the same system of values as the West does. Only took 80 years.
I take it that guy was not at the women's bathroom protest. I'm going to guess.
Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. Trump army, drain the swamp. Yeah, that's what he's doing. That is exactly what he's doing, bringing in all these ghouls who not only are not at odds with the deep state, that are making them more powerful with AI, that are backing them up with new AI systems. Yeah, MAGA, that is really MAGA. Now look, like I said, man, I've kind of tried to leash quiet horse here, pull in the bit a little bit for Keaton. If there was
a little bit,
if there was ever a time to make a gauge, this is it. Because that is some gay ass shit.
Well, you picked a bad episode for that, because if you think they have the hots for Trump, this Daniel Penny guy, oh my God. I hope he took a subway. You know, I know he has a hard time on the subway, but I would hate to be that guy walking through Soho yesterday. Mass transit, baby, underground. Get in and out of there. You are not safe with those MAGA chuds at those Soho bars. You walk through there, man, you're gonna have another manslaughter charge on your hands if you want to come out of there intact.
I mean, look, it has been often observed that there's definitely a strong strain of homoeroticism running through Nazi Germany.
Right.
This is the same strain.
Yeah.
With the black eagle wings, making the West great again. This is a very homoerotic fixation on Elon that some people have. But hey, to be fair, like I said, a lot of people did push back. So this is one. This guy, Mr. World War III, and here's a headline. The U.S. will very likely fight a three-front war against Russia, China, and Iran, Palantir's Alex Karp says. Well, if he has anything to say about it, I'm sure we will, and that is what is so dangerous about elevating and empowering people like this. And this is why I keep talking about this, because we kid our friends in the MAGA movement, but hey, man, it's up to you. In my experience, they're more likely to push back on their leaders than the libs ever were. Look at who these people are. Look at how they're trying to look at what they did with the CEO, where they turn around, they want to call everything woke to get you to back a corporate deep state agenda. These people are not fighting the deep state. They just want to control the deep state. They just want the deep state to serve them.
Right,
they're just from another wing of
right.
Yeah, they want to streamline it. They want to make it more efficient, and they want to make sure that they don't get investigated.
Right.
They want to send them out. They want to politicize it. That's why the Kash Patel thing, I'm like, listen to what he's saying. It's not that he doesn't want a deep state. He wants to weaponize the deep state in the other direction.
Right. And, Tusker put this pretty well, when she talked to us about this, I think it was on the air. She said, the reason why at the end of the day, Trump is allowed back in and he's allowed to win. And at the end of the day, the reason why he's not the threat to the deep state that people say he is because he enforces the idea of the United States as the entitled hegemonic power, right? We have our boot on the neck of the rest of the world, and we should. It's good that way. We want to keep it that way. Now, his rationale for it is a bit different from the Obama rationale, from the, sort of consensus, which is what the Democrats have been actually saying through the 2016 campaign and even over the past 8 years. We are great because we are good. America is great because it's good, right? Mm-hmm. The reason we're a great power is because we're good. It's our goodness. It's our virtue that generates the popular will that then propagates throughout the world. And of course, we are the most powerful. We rose to the top through a sort of global merit-based system, and our system is the best. So why wouldn't we be at the top?
Right.
Trump's rationale for this is more, well, we're the best because we have the biggest military and our economy is the strongest, and so we just get to push other countries around. I mean, it's a different rationale, and that is kind of offensive to the consensus because politically it's a lot more palatable to convince people that, no, the reason why we are so scummy is actually because we're so great, right? Whereas Trump just kind of articulates things in a much more matter-of-fact way. I would argue actually a much more honest way.
It's in a much more honest way, but
it's the same shit. Trump is not going Trump is not going to usher in a multipolar world any faster than Joe Biden would, I don't think.
Well,
Joe Biden might do it by accident.
There is that philosophical and intellectual underpinning, though, and that's what people like Brett Weinstein are doing for the MAGA movement. They go out there and they try to give it this veneer of the virtue of Western civilization versus the barbarians in this newfangled podcast kind of a way. But it's the same old Western chauvinism dressed up as being edgy and punk.
Right. And those arguments are strengthened and bolstered by the kernel of truth, the very large kernel of truth, I'd argue. I think we'd all argue, which is that the Democratic Party and the sort of liberal order has a very illiberal streak running through it, especially as technology increases. A lot of these liberal ideals that the liberal order likes to tout, these are ideals they don't really believe in at the end of the day,
neither do they,
freedom of speech.
As we've seen since October 7th.
Of course. But, you like a Rescue the Republic rally is made possible by the fact that, yes, liberals have overstepped and shown their ass.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But then the other side of this is what we just saw here. The other side of this is not an alternative that I can really embrace in good conscience and tell other people to as well. That's why it can be a lonely place, but we're stubborn bastards. Like, this is why throughout the campaign, this is why we couldn't wait for the campaign season to end, because we're having this question imposed upon us, well, who do you pick? And our answer was emphatically neither. Because it's the only position that makes sense. Now, if that's not clear enough in terms of, okay, where do we want to go? Look, I'm sorry. I believe in the David Mamet's approach to acting was invent nothing, deny nothing. Don't make up something that's not there, and don't deny what is there. That's it. That's my attitude towards this. Invent nothing, deny nothing. See what you see, call it as you see it. That's it. If that leads you to a place of uncertainty, then so be it. That's where you are.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
What's wrong? Well, people are uncomfortable with uncertainty.
Right.
That's why if you look at all of the biggest performing films of all time, biggest box office, they're all very simplistic good versus evil stories, where it's very clear who what's the animated thing, the James Cameron thing, Avatar.
Yeah.
It's Avatar, it's Star Wars, it's these very, very simple good versus evil thing. And we see that in our politics. People are very uncomfortable with moral ambiguity. They're very uncomfortable with the idea that everyone's bad. So they have to get very invested in one side or another. What's I think has been interesting since these guys came to power is they're feeling themselves now. So they're really making it explicit and transparent who they serve. But you're seeing more and more of these kind of intellectual, dark webby kind of aligned people taking the mask off and being like, yeah, well, they're going to investigate me for fraud. That's woke. They're gonna stop us from bombing countries, which is ostensibly what a lot of people supported MAGA for. Yeah, that's woke. Right. And yeah, I think that is going to start to peel away a lot of the more independently minded MAGA, of which there is a larger portion than there ever was in the liberal coalition, who are going to turn around and say, what the fuck?
Right. Exactly. If you want hope, there's that new movie Union, which we did for the film club night, about the Amazon Union Drive in New York. And there's a scene in that movie where it's a cold night and there's a windstorm, and it's blowing away the tent that they use to cook the food and have their meetings at night, and they use to enroll people. It's blowing the tent away, and there's this guy holding it together in the freezing cold with his bare hands, just standing there for however long it takes to keep the tent from blowing away in the cold. You want hope? That guy is who gives me hope. That's who gives me hope. Not these fucking snakes. So yeah, you want somebody to look toward that guy. Watch that movie in that scene when he's standing out in the freezing cold holding that tent from blowing away so they can keep at their Union Drive. That is a guy you could invest some hope in.
Well, that's where you're really getting into the peasant mind. You got to get away from the peasant mind. You got to start to admire your own peers.
Right.
Instead of looking to ghouls like this as your heroes. They're not your heroes. They're your enemies.
Yep. Agreed. Michael Castillo is here. Hey, Michael gave us $50. Let's have a jank drop for Michael Castillo and a cowbell. Beautiful. Can we hit that sound drop before I read it so I don't step on it? There we go.
You should just read it because it's going to take me a minute.
All right, I'll read it. Where was Hawk Tuah Newsome when those 3 Army National Guardsmen were killed at Post 22 in Syria? Not a word. Thank you, Michael. Here, I got
As for me against you, who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
Here we go. Never gets old. I'll read the second one because it's also from Michael for $10. When Jay-Z was hanging with Dame Dash in the early 90s, he tried to get with Aaliyah, but she was dating R. Kelly at the time. So Jay-Z hooked up with Foxy Brown, who was underage at the time. We do have a Jay-Z story that we're going to do.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
We're on it. So thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate that very much. JM, thanks for the $2 and the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks to the $9.99, says cogent and relevant as always. Thanks, DD. Well, thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Appreciate that very much. What do we got here? We got Violent Fembot. Thanks for the $1 here. Kamala Harris received $774,019 from UnitedHealthcare in 2024. far more than any other candidate. You'd think that would buy some public sympathy. Yeah, exactly. She should actually go ahead and like tweet that out, right? Okay. Hillary Hinton says this is going to seem wacky. So bear with me, but something doesn't add up about the JFK assassination. I know there was a thorough good faith investigation, but you fellas ought to look into that. Yes, we should. That's a good idea. Thanks for that tip. Appreciate that. Eric Cusso says peace through alien invasion and occupation. Appreciate that, Eric Cusso. Thank you very much for that. All right, we got a crowd filing in here, 1,100 strong in the YouTube chat, 872 on Rumble. Let's smash that like button, tweet this out for us. Let's share this stream. Thank you guys very much for being here today. All right, let's go on. We got segment number 2. Russ, this is another one of yours.
Which one are we doing?
Lou. That's what I think we should call him.
Luigi.
I think we should call him Lou. I think that's a fun name. Name for him.
Yeah. There he is. Yeah. All right. So as you probably heard, breaking the hearts of millions, Luigi Mangione looks to allegedly, he is allegedly the man who shot.
He's the suspect.
He is the suspect, allegedly. We have to learn these rules. See, this is the problem with not having gone to J school.
Right.
You know, they would train you to always say allegedly.
Oh, yeah. Well, I called him the suspect in the thing. I mean, that's all he is. And he's looking more and more like a suspect and not and not a perp. I mean,
he looks like a strong suspect.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So what we know about Luigi Mangione, a suspect charged in UnitedHealthcare CEO's killing. Luigi Mangione has been charged with murder in last week's deadly shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, according to court documents filed Monday night. The 26-year-old, who was identified earlier as a person of interest, was arrested on firearms and other charges in Pennsylvania after being spotted at a McDonald's in Altoona amid a massive manhunt for the shooter. Before Mangione was officially identified as the suspect, New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch announced at a news conference Monday afternoon that he was believed to be a person of interest in the shooting. Officers in Altoona arrested Mangione on unrelated charges at a McDonald's there. You know, see, now right here, what's he doing in the McDonald's? We're boycotting McDonald's. See, right there, you can see he's not the leftist that they've been claiming he is. And he went to a Starbucks, too. He went to a Starbucks on the way to the assassination.
Starting to have second thoughts about this guy.
I'm starting to have second thoughts. After a customer alerted an employee who called police, officials said, quote, a Pennsylvania resident saw something early this morning at McDonald's and said something to our local police, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro said, praising the resident as a hero. Now, they don't get into details in this, but I saw this clip. Shapiro said, people have fears, have anger about the healthcare system that are valid, but this guy is not a hero. The guy who called the police, that's a hero. I think he's going to get ratioed on that one. The officers questioned Mangione, who was acting suspiciously, Tisch said. According to court documents, the Altoona officers found Mangione sitting at a table in the back of the McDonald's wearing a blue medical mask and looking at a laptop with a backpack on the floor near the table. When the officers asked him to pull the mask down, they recognized him from photos released to the media. So this is him from a security camera at the back there. Mangione was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs and a U.S. passport, Tisch said. One of the IDs matched the fake New Jersey ID that the shooting suspect used to check into a Manhattan hostel before the shooting, the commissioner said. I know that hostel. It's a few blocks from where I live, actually. It's very nice. It's a very nice old building. When the Altoona officers asked Mangione for his ID at the McDonald's, he gave them the New Jersey ID, according to an affidavit submitted with a criminal complaint. When one officer was checking the ID with dispatchers, the other asked Mangione if he had been to New York recently, and Mangione became quiet and started to shake, according to the affidavit. Quote, that really invoked a physical reaction from the suspect, Altoona Deputy Police Chief Derek Swope told reporters Monday night. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking at that question, and he didn't really answer it directly. So that statement alone really said a lot, and the suspect didn't have to say a lot after that question to show that, he was very nervous at that point. Mangione provided his real name after he was told he would be arrested if he lied about his identity, according to the affidavit. When an officer asked him why he lied about his name, he allegedly said, "I clearly shouldn't have." So this is the fake ID that he was using. Now I am told, look, back in my day, we used to go to 8th Street. That was where you would get fake IDs. I'm told you can order these now online, and they'll give you like what we used to have was like bullshit. They'll give you like almost impossible to spot as fake kind of IDs. Officers found a gun and a suppressor that were consistent with the weapon used in the December 4th shooting of Thompson, Tish said. Police said the gun found in his backpack appeared to be a 3D printed ghost gun with a loaded Glock magazine with 6 9mm full metal jacket rounds. Clothing and a mask consistent with those of the suspect in the case were also recovered, police said. Mangione was charged Monday evening with 5 counts in Pennsylvania: forgery, firearms not to be carried without a license, tampering with records or identification, possessing instruments of crime, and false identification to law enforcement. He is expected to be extradited to New York to face charges, though authorities told CBS New York that process could take days or even weeks. An extradition proceeding is set for Tuesday afternoon. Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens said Mangione was initially cooperative and then stopped cooperating with investigators. He wasn't aware of him having a criminal history. A handwritten document that, quote, speaks to both his motivation and mindset was also recovered from Mangione when he was apprehended by police, according to Tish. In the 3-page note, he attempted to justify his actions, police said. He wrote that the U.S. had, quote, most expensive healthcare system in the world, but lamented that the country ranks number 42 in life expectancy. He also referred to corporations as mafiosa that have gotten too powerful, and said such companies abuse the United States for immense profit. He wrote that others had shown a light on corporations' corruption and greed in the past, and claimed that he was the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Quote, we don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America, NYPD Chief of Detectives Joseph Kennedy told reporters.
Now, do we believe I mean, this is what's so weird about this. He had this on his person?
Apparently so.
Like,
apparently so.
I mean, that just seems like they were talking about how sophisticated an operation this must have been, how well trained this guy was, how he was able to.
I thought it was military.
Authorities.
A lot of people thought it was a corporate hit because it was done so closely.
I mean, you speculated maybe he had a silicone mask and that wasn't his real face. So I mean, it turns out that probably that was not the case, but it was fair to speculate at the time because he got away, which is very difficult to do that, especially in New York City.
Out of Manhattan.
Exactly.
You got a camera on
everywhere.
Every corner.
Exactly.
Every building has security cameras pointing to the street. You're being surveilled everywhere.
So it's just so bizarre that he would have that with him. Like, I'm not saying he's a patsy. We can't prove that now. We don't really have anything to go on, but it just seems strange. It just seems very bizarre that he had that with him.
I mean, if you look at, we'll get more into his backstory and its history. He's obviously an extremely intelligent guy. Right down to 3D printing the gun so that it would be untraceable. Like, he really, really, really thought this through. Apparently he didn't have a plan for getting out of the country.
Yeah. Altoona it's fairly far. It's not that far. I mean, my friend lived in Altoona for a while. It's like central Pennsylvania. So it's about 4 hours out of Manhattan, 4 hours from here abouts. So I mean, that's far away, but it's not terribly far away. So anyway, just some details.
Okay. So of course, this has been a story that has inspired a million memes. And of course, this development was no exception. When you've been waiting to get caught for days, but the cops are dragging their feet, I sure hope no one sees me eating my burger in this conspicuous public location and then finds the manifesto and gun I'm carrying.
Yeah, it's kind of my point.
To your point, Keaton.
Yeah.
But this has been one of the funniest. Burger King.
Right. Yeah.
We won't turn you into the feds.
Yeah.
And here, marked safe from being the most hated McDonald's employee in the country today. And this is a fun one. People have been leaving reviews for that McDonald's.
Yes.
Festering rat den and
Yeah, like
police
rats in the
haven.
kitchen, yeah.
This McDonald's is full of rats. Okay, now this fella, Taco, did the Lord's work and compiled pretty good, concise, interesting facts about Mangione. So we'll take a look at that. I didn't include all of them. If you want to go to this thread on X, it's pretty good. He is an avid reader with 295 books listed on Goodreads. Academically, he holds both a master's and bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Pennsylvania. Additionally, he gained recognition as the valedictorian at Gilman School in Baltimore, showcasing his academic excellence. His work includes contributions to machine learning and robotics, as evidenced by projects on GitHub. And this is him in happier times. Looks like, perfectly normal guy. Pretty charmed life. Comes from a very, very wealthy family. His grandparents own country clubs and real estate. This is his profile here. That picture of him in the backpack, that's actually his Tinder profile. It's from his Tinder profile. Calm down, ladies. Calm down.
Right.
Often reposted tweets about anxiety, and here this is from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. This probably makes him pretty typical of a lot of a bright young man of his generation, that he would take an interest in this subject because they're pretty riddled with anxiety for good reason. Friends that went to high school with Luigi Mangione said what keeps coming up is a back surgery that changed everything for him, and he went absolutely crazy. This checks out with his Goodreads history and the X-ray in his header on X. So you can see that back X-ray that has a lot of hardware there. It's not clear if that is his own X-ray, but there was also in the CBS article, he was in Honolulu for a while, and he joined kind of a cooperative living situation, and they say he was very frustrated that he tried to take up surfing and hiking and he couldn't do it because of this back injury.
Right.
Luigi Mangione wrote "Violence is Necessary" in an Amazon review of the Unabomber's Manifesto. Now, the reader's note here, which is accurate, he didn't write these words. He quoted them and said they're interesting. They didn't originate with him. He's cousins with the sitting Maryland state delegate Nino Mangione, who represents District 42A. He was going to have a fundraiser, which he now canceled for obvious reasons. His last quote he liked on Goodreads speaks volumes. Quote, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." That's from Dr. Seuss the Lorax. Luigi's disdain toward the healthcare industry is likely due to its treatment of an ailing relative, according to the New York Post. He lost his grandmother in 2013 and his grandfather in 2017. Now, I will just say, clearly with the kind of money the family had, insurance would not have been an issue. So why that would have set him off is unclear.
Right.
The alleged UnitedHealthcare CEO shooter scheduled videos to be uploaded to his YouTube account following his arrest. The video states, "If you see this, I'm already under arrest." And you can see here, all is scheduled. Be patient. Bye for now. So, ladies, I know this is really what you've all been curious about. And we don't know, sometimes people lie. We don't know what he was responding to, but a lot of people have interpreted this as the answer to their prayers. Somebody said, "Do any of you retards have a PhD? I have questions." And he seems to be saying, "I have a pretty huge dick." So, all right. Well, that'll come in handy in jail.
Well, that was his joke, his PhD. That's what he meant.
Yeah. CNN reports the discovery of a 2-page document containing the chilling lines, "These parasites had it coming," I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done. Now, Elon again, he's everywhere. Elon Musk says he's looking into the suspension of Luigi Mangioni's Twitter X account after it got taken down. Quote, this happened without my knowledge looking into it. Now, why would Elon want to bring back his Twitter account? Well, apparently he was a fan. This is really going to complicate the narrative for the Tim Pools and the Matt Walshes that he was some kind of a crazed lefty. Because look, he's retweeting Elon Musk. This is a battle to the death with the anti-civilizational woke mind virus. And he retweets somebody who quote tweeted him, your commitment to long-term civilizational success, Elon, is not universally shared. It's not even the majority position. What you call the woke mind virus cares about one thing only, equality. The levelers want to destroy everything because in the rubble, we will all be equal. And here, this guy, Red Leader, did the Lord's work. He pulled a bunch of his tweets before the X account got taken down. And I got to say, I don't want to put the guy in a box, but if you look at what he retweets, what he quotes, he's definitely kind of in the anti-woke camp. You got Chris Williamson, who's definitely IDW adjacent at the very least, saying men and women have been convinced over the last few decades that they are adversaries. This isn't the case. Another one kind of dealing with the same theme. It's sad that the question of are men important can't be answered with a simple yes. What message does this send to young boys when society says that they're good at nothing? And then he really liked this book by Tim Urban, What's Our Problem? He says, I believe this book will go down in history as the most important philosophical text of the early 21st century. And it's a book that takes bipartisan shots at both kind of DEI, social justice on the left, and the kind of religious conservatism on the right. But he definitely has a theme going of he's got the Rome thing. We did a funny segment on that a little bit ago. He's talking about ancient Rome, that a lot of men have an obsession with Rome. Not me, of course, but right. Some people. So yeah, look, he's a young guy figuring it out, but you definitely can't call him some kind of left winger. He shared a TED talk from Peter Thiel as one of his tweets. So it seems like he's more in Tim Pool's kind of ideological lane than he is in Brianna Joy Gray's, for example.
Yes, I would say that.
So they're gonna have a hard time really branding him as a lefty, and that's why they're leaning now into his family background as being one of wealth.
Right, exactly. So people are saying, he's a spoiled rich kid, or some people are saying that, he's an op and that, he's a plant. And I think that is part of an unwillingness to reckon with his sort of amorphous political views. I think, they don't want to take ownership of him. But when you look at that, I mean, it's pretty heterodox. It's kind of hard to just pin him down in one way. And like I said, the questions I have is, which were brought up in that meme there, how he could have that literature on him just seems crazy to me. It seems crazy to me. So we'll have to see more. This is why we're calling it a suspect. We have to call him that anyway, obviously. I mean, what did it take? It took about a little less than a week to find him.
It's remarkable to me that he thought it through enough to get out of New York City. If you've never been here, I cannot tell you how hard that would be to do what he did and get off Manhattan Island. And he did. Yeah. So you didn't have a plan for what comes next?
Yeah.
After that's what's incredible, that you thought everything. It seems like you thought everything through up to getting out of Manhattan.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will have to see, obviously, what happens from here, what else comes out. But that is overall just kind of a general overview. And I thought part of what's interesting about that is the fact that he doesn't seem to be as simple a guy as a lot of people thought.
No. And I was wrong about him having a military background. He's just very smart.
Right.
He was smart enough. See, part of the reason I thought that also, and a lot of people who watched the footage said he knew how to unjam the gun. So he had some kind of training. He had some kind of background. A lot of people could dream up something like this, but to actually do it, like for a kid like this with no real background in killing, frankly, to do that and to so calmly execute an escape plan, you would think they must have some kind of training. But if, as is alleged, he is the person who did it, apparently not. It's just a really remarkable story. Now we can already see, and this has been the case since this happened, the battle over control of the narrative and the battle to try to persuade people to not be on his side is going to be as much of a story as the trial, because we can already see that happening now. We can already see them trying desperately to get the public. I saw it right after it happened. I was doing research. I watched like a little local news clip from local New York news, and they say, yes, people in New York are nervous. No, they're not. They understand that he's not after anybody else.
Well, the cops came out and said that. The cops came out and said, I mean, they had the tree lighting ceremony that evening because the police at the initial press conference, said we think this was a specifically targeted attack. And I don't think they explicitly said this quote at the press conference, but implicit in this, obviously, is that he was not a threat to the general public.
But that's where you see the propaganda.
Right.
Yes, people in the city are nervous. Yeah, people are walking around going, did you hear about that poor CEO? God, I double locked my doors. Bullshit. Right. And then to reinforce it, they interview someone who talks about what a great guy he was. There's right from the beginning. It's really fascinating. It really is a great demonstration of how much our news is state TV. How is that any different from how any country with a totalitarian government's media would report a story like that?
Right.
The people are very mournful at the death of the party leader.
Right.
Meanwhile, people are partying, right?
Right. I mean, that's been the whole viral sensation of this. The whole internet, even Taylor Lorenz, and we have to say this. We're not saying we condone it, obviously.
Of course not.
This is the system pushed to a breaking point, and this is what happens. I mean, this is there are certain parallels, not as it pertains to the people involved, obviously, but there's a little theme of vigilantism on this week's show because of the next piece that we're going to be getting into. These are all symptoms of social collapse because this event took place in the wake of a political collapse, a failure of the system to address political problems. I mean, that's obviously what led to this. And, any vigilante can decide that anyone who's not on their side is a threat that has to be taken out. So that's why you can't condone it, but you can explain it that way. It's obvious that's why it happened. There's no other way to look at this and say that if not for event A, event B wouldn't have happened. No, this is a product of years of political failure. It's a failure of the democratic system. And this is the failure of the democratic system that mostly the Democratic Party has been lamenting for the last 8 years while doing nothing to save it. Absolutely nothing to save it. The B part of this, which we will get into, it's a different clip, but I'll tease it out in this one, is that now universal health care at an all-time high in terms of popularity. The Democratic Party will not harness that. They will not take advantage. They will not seize upon that sentiment and wield it in a productive way. And so when that doesn't happen, this happens. Not saying we condone it, but we're just saying that's what happens. That is just the course of events.
When you have a fake democracy, you're inviting violent unrest.
Right, exactly.
It's all fun and games. Oh yeah, heads we win, tails you lose. We're gonna have these fake elections that don't actually change anything. We're gonna control what candidates get to run, and when you get a guy like Bernie Sanders, we're gonna kneecap him and force our grotesque, corrupt old mummy on people that nobody actually wanted. Well, now you've created the Kennedy conditions. When you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable, because you make them feel like, hey, we all tried to get Bernie elected, for example, and we weren't able to. What, you think people don't know that these candidates don't serve them? You got a certain number of people, even in Trump's case. If you look at the numbers, most people don't like him. Most people don't trust him. That's a minority of people that really feel like they accomplished something by electing him. Most people understand that's not the case.
Right. Exactly. All right. Let's go to some more super chats and some Rumble rants here. We got Zaldivar says CIA's greatest hits. Mark. I don't know how to say that name. Mark Zepizauer describes these. Okay. I've not heard that name. Thank you, Zaldivar. Appreciate that. Sir Blake Salate, friends and family don't let friends' family go to McDonald's. Remember that when you can't afford your medical bills. That's right. Are there any good fast food places? Are there any fast food places that are not tied up in genocide and stuff? I don't think Wendy's is. Alex Karp, who once
In-N-Out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, In-N-Out. Alex Karp once mused that if we allow the campus protests to continue, that we wouldn't be able to prosecute all these wars. Is that right? Yeah, you know what? I think that it was him, now that you mention it.
Did he say that?
Yeah,
That sounds like the same fucking psycho.
Yeah.
That's a very good example of Dorothy Parker's famous observation. If you want to know what God thinks of money, look at who he gives it to.
Yeah, exactly. Waiting for my Alex Karp to say that we don't fund terrorists, they're anti-government startups. Yes, thank you. Name my taco. Appreciate that. MP Killer, thanks for the $20. Whitney Webb did a great breakdown of Peter Thiel, owner of Rumble. He's not the owner, he's an investor. Frightening what they are doing. We are doomed. Thank you, MP Killer. Yes,
her book just arrived. And when I saw how dense the print is, I said, yeah, if we wait to invite her on until I finish that, we're going to have her on sometime around the next election. So
yeah, right, exactly.
I'm going to reach out to Whitney Webb and invite her on, and I'll just do my research.
There we go. That's a way to go. All right, let's go to Ravid Laz. When he pulled the trigger, Luigi must have been yelling in his head, Figlio di Putana. A la Godfather 2. Thank you, Ravid Laz. Appreciate that. Okay. Why don't we do an ad here for some coffee? Why don't we sell some coffee? I haven't done that in a while. So, folks, have you heard of the recent advertising scandal? Let me break it down for you. The CEO of Rumble, Chris Pavlovski, recently released an email from Inspire Brands and Dunkin' Donuts. That email explicitly states that the culture of Rumble is too polarizing for Dunkin' Donuts' taste. In other words, they have a problem with Rumble's culture, and they want nothing to do with it. So here's the solution. Stop buying products that don't support free speech and start supporting brands that do. The competing coffee brand that we should all get behind is Rumble's 1775 coffee. For a limited time, Rumble is offering buy 2 bags, get 1 for free. They're 16-ounce bags, so you get a lot of bang for your buck. Dissidents who have purchased this have given us very good reviews for this coffee, so everybody's been very happy with it. People are loving it. People are saying great things. So go to 1775coffee.com and enter promo code Duncan to get this limited time deal. So it's buy 2, get 1 free at 1775coffee.com, promo code Duncan. All righty, beautiful. Okay, all right. I have not had to do much in this show. You've done the heavy lifting now. But before we get to our big piece of the day, which is the Daniel Penny verdict, this is sort of a B-side to our former segment here. So given the events of the week, folks, universal healthcare is back in fashion. That's right. More Americans say healthcare is a government responsibility, according to the latest Gallup Poll: 62% of Americans say it's the federal government's responsibility to ensure everyone has health care coverage, a survey from Gallup found. The figure is the highest it's been in more than a decade. It slipped to its low of 42% in 2013 during the difficult rollout of the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare. If there's one factoid that you could throw out to the libs to describe what an abominable failure Barack Obama was, it's that he came in, healthcare was his priority, and shortly after his first term, right into his second term, universal healthcare was at an all-time low in popularity for his work. Think about that. He comes in promising a public option. His big first plan when he took office was, we're going to do healthcare. We're going to fix the healthcare system. And in doing so, he tanked support for Medicare for all. George Bush didn't tank support for Medicare for all. Donald Trump didn't tank it. No, Barack Obama tanked it.
All right. To be fair, and I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with the way it was executed and instituted, there was a full court press from Republicans in the conservative media
absolutely was.
Demonize universal health care during that period.
There absolutely was, but this was not, don't forget, this wasn't in 2009 when that was being litigated. This was a few years after it had been implemented. And so I think the implementation of it is what turned a lot of people off too, because it ended up driving up costs for a lot of people.
You can keep it.
Right. Well, you like your doctor, you can keep it. Also, Obamacare was really a great program for like the working poor, which is what I was. So it was great for me. You know, it was great for us. I mean, we were on Obamacare for a while. So I was definitely one of the winners in it. But like the middle class, especially like the working to lower middle class, yeah, they got raked over the coals. Because if you had an income of like 40 grand a year, you were paying $500 a month in premiums for a deductible that was more than you could afford anyway. So it wasn't really insurance. Right. It was just this tax that got you horrible healthcare.
And then you had the mandate at that time.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You had to pay it. The worst thing about Obamacare is it revived the old attack on left policies that it benefits only the poor and the middle class pays for it. It brought that back.
Yep.
Like Bill Clinton, whatever his sins and whatever cruelties he committed to get rid of that, he pretty much managed to get rid of it more or less. The idea that the Democrats are synonymous with taxing the middle class. This brought that right back.
Right. It was at its highest point in 2006, when 69% of Americans believed health care should be covered by the government. Gallup noted that from 2000 to 2008, a majority of Americans consistently believed the government should ensure its citizens have health care coverage. As then President Obama began to introduce the ACA, support for the idea shifted and Americans became divided over the issue. Public opinion shifted back and most Americans saw coverage as the government's issue in the later years of Obama's presidency, Gallup said. Large majorities of Democrats have consistently believed the government should ensure Americans have health care coverage, but in recent years, independents and Republicans have also shared this view. Currently, 32% of Republicans hold the view that government should provide coverage, which is up from 22% in 2020. Among independents, the view stands at 65%, up 6 points from 2020. And once again, this is an idea that the Democratic Party simply refuses to embrace. Just like this year, there was reliable polling out of the swing states that said overwhelming majorities of swing state voters wanted a ceasefire, and that majorities of swing state voters, not swing state Democrats, swing state voters, wanted aid to Israel conditioned, if not cut off. Nope, they'll leave all those voters on the table. Look at this issue. Your base is in lockstep on it. A third of your opponents want it, and 65% of the all-important independent swing voters want it, and yet they won't touch it.
And the people who write the checks do not.
Exactly. That's what it all comes down to. Gallup noted that as President-elect Trump prepares to take the White House again, public support for the ACA is just as high as it was in his first term. Trump and Republicans attempted to unsuccessfully repeal the ACA in 2017, And he has indicated he is interested in trying again to dismantle the law, but the survey shows doing so could be a difficult task. Yes, and that will come with a very, very hefty price tag. You know, healthcare is one of these issues where you really see interests transcending ideologies. Like, nobody wants to go without healthcare coverage. No one wants to sweat when they go see a doctor that they're going to be in financial ruin when they walk out the door. Whatever your political views are, people have interests that transcend them. And so when you try to touch people's health coverage, there's a big political price to pay for that. And now you have 2024 going into 2025, almost 2/3 of Americans in lockstep behind the idea that the government has a responsibility to pay for the health care of its people. And you have one party threatening to take a chainsaw to the ACA, and you have a second party that says, well, no, we're not going to try and move the ball any further down the field. They keep running on it as if they say, I mean, Biden said he wanted to pursue a public option. We just knew that was nonsense. We knew there was no chance of that. We knew. It was very clear in 2016 when Bernie was pushing Medicare for all, and the retort to that was, well, expand the ACA. And we know expand the ACA is nonsense. They don't want to do anything. Right. They consider this issue done. Obamacare is as good as it gets. It'll never get any better than that, despite the fact that overwhelming majorities of people, including 2/3 of independents, want it. They still will not touch it.
Well, this is why I think the only answer is mass civil disobedience, mass strikes, general strikes. That's it. That's the only language they're going to understand. You need to make the country ungovernable. This system is so corrupt. You cannot deal with it by voting anymore, because they will not let anyone who's not going to continue this system stand for office. We saw that. We saw that with Bernie. We've seen what happened with the squad. Okay, so we got a few in. They ate them. Right. That's what they're going to do with anyone you manage to get in there. And I'll remind people, for anyone who forgot, Obama had 2 people who refused to vote for Obamacare for 2 different reasons. Kucinich would not vote for it without a public option, and Lieberman would not vote for it with one. Right. Guess whose district he went to?
Right, exactly.
Kucinich.
Guess who he leaned on? Right.
That's who he leaned on.
Yep. That says it all. Absolutely. All right. What do we got here? We got Hillary Hinton says this may seem wacky, so bear with me, but something doesn't add up about the MLK assassination. I know there was a thorough good faith investigation, but you fellas ought to look into it. Thank you for the tip on that. Appreciate that very much. Okay. All right, folks. We are going to now get into our big piece here. In fact, before we do that, why don't we pause for a word from our supporters here at dudissidents.com/supporters. Let me grab that here. By the way, if any of you guys want to check out this show scroll, Jake made a link. You can just go to dudissidents.com/supporters and just watch this. You could put this on your TV. This could be like your holiday
Anise is a supporter? I didn't know that.
Kind of thing. Yeah, Anise is a supporter.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Quite a few of you guys signed up. Thank you guys very much for doing that. We appreciate you all. You can go to patreon.com/dudissidents, dudissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals at dudissidents.locals.com and become a member. Membership is the backbone of the show. We could not do this show without you guys, and so thank you guys very much for your support. Perks of joining include your name up on the show credits. You also get call-in access to the post-show Q&As, which are every Sunday night over on Rumble. You also get access to different supporter-exclusive live streams. Our full-length pre-taped interviews you get live-streamed access to. You also get interactive live streams with content and call-ins. And, of course, we have our movie clubs once a month now. We also are going to be putting on a Dissident Arts Festival in April, where our members will have live stream access to that whenever we do a special live event. we will make that available to stream for our supporters. So dudissidents.locals.com. That's if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, it's super easy. You can just click that bright red join button underneath the video player, and that takes you right to our locals page where you can sign up. All that for as little as $5 a month, plus, of course, the goodwill of supporting independent media. Please and thank you very much for your support. Name My Taco says it feels like our MAGA brothers and sisters are about to experience their version of Obama's second term.
Yep.
More of the same promises as last time, but only delivering for the ghouls.
And hey, that's hopeful. That's hopeful because the libs never rejected Obama.
Right. Exactly.
But I think you'll have a lot more of the MAGA people who won't play along. And then all bets are off. Then you could actually get an organization of a people-powered movement.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's right. And that's one of the reasons why I think there is an opportunity to be found as these days wear on and as the new government takes form. Okay, let's go to segment number 4 on the day. All right, folks. So, as most of you have heard by now, no doubt, Daniel Penny has been acquitted of criminally negligent homicide after a more serious manslaughter charge was dismissed. A Manhattan jury found Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide Monday in the death of Jordan Neely on a New York City subway last year. Penny also previously faced a more serious second-degree manslaughter charge, but Judge Maxwell Wiley dismissed it Friday at the request of prosecutors after jurors twice told the court they could not come to a verdict on the count. Penny, a 26-year-old former Marine, would have faced up to 4 years in prison for a criminally negligent homicide conviction and up to 15 years for a manslaughter conviction. The case stems from the death of Neely, a 30-year-old street artist who struggled with homelessness, mental illness, and drugs on a subway car on May 1st, 2023. Neely entered the subway car and began acting erratically as he threw his jacket and yelled at passengers that he was hungry and thirsty and didn't care whether he died, witnesses said. Penny, a passenger, grabbed Neely from behind in a chokehold, forced him to the train floor, and restrained him there for several minutes. When Penny let go of the hold, Neely was non-responsive. He was later declared dead. Prosecutors said Penny acted recklessly and negligently by restraining Neely in a chokehold for so long, even after Neely stopped moving. We are here today because the defendant used way too much force for way too long in way too reckless of a manner, prosecutor Daphne Uran said in closing arguments. His defense had said he was acting to protect others from a threat. Quote, "I wasn't trying to injure him," Penny said in an interview with NYPD investigators shortly after the incident. "I'm just trying to keep him from hurting anybody else he was threatening." So here is a bit of a news report which has some footage from the post-incident interview. So we'll play this.
Behind me, I kind of came like this.
Okay. Did you apply pressure, Daniel?
No, I just wanted to keep him from getting to people.
On day 7 of the high-profile subway chokehold trial in Lower Manhattan, jurors were shown a half-hour-long videotaped interrogation and heard former Marine Daniel Penny recall in his own words what happened. While speaking with detectives, Penny demonstrated the chokehold he used on Jordan Neely, appearing unaware that Neely died shortly afterwards.
I'm not trying to kill the guy.
Right.
All right. So that's part of that interview there. Listen to what these witnesses had to say about Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny situation. Nothing at all about any racial motivation for a white man to kill a black man. So here are some interviews. This is police body cam footage from witnesses shortly after this incident happened on the day of. So we'll take a look at this.
He came in, he put his hand so he could come in, right? Okay. I guess he was pissed or something, but I looked at him, right? And then he started taking off his sweater, dummy hard, and then he threw it. And then he told everyone that he had a rough day and that he don't care what happens today. He don't care about going to jail, but that someone's dying today.
Bro, move. He can come to me. Was that a fight at all? No, he came on the train. I was sitting right there. I was sitting next to everybody that was moving. That was the last one I was sitting. He came on the train. He was like, yo, I'm looking for food. I'm looking for this shit. Like, he was ready to risk it all, basically. He was like basically, he's going to tell the people about to hurt somebody. He was down on the floor. He's like, I'm ready to hurt somebody. I'm ready to do this. And he was right here. Like I said, I don't think he did nothing wrong. Everybody moved, and he was about to start him. He came in and he tried to this while the cop was coming. They took mad. I was falling out home. Yeah. They took mad on the cop. He was trying to resist him while somebody came. They took mad on. Okay. He was on the train. He was right there. Like, I see him take like he got on the train. He dropped his phone. He's like, I'm ready to hurt anybody. I'm hungry. I'm ready to go back to $100. And dude got up, he saw he was about to hurt somebody, and he got up and he was trained. And he was trying to raise that. I don't know. You saw everything on everything? No, you saw everything? Okay. She's gonna lay right here. Yeah. Okay, what did you see?
What did I see? I was sitting up there, I heard the young man that's on the floor saying, hey, I'm willing to die, I'll do anything. I'm willing to die. I'll go to jail. I don't care. And he was saying it so loud that everyone turned around. So the young man, he got belligerent and he tackled him down. He was tackled in the brown jacket, the one that just went past.
The guy in the brown jacket?
Yeah, you got to see the guy in the brown jacket. Yeah.
You got to for the guys in the briefs here. You got a brown jacket. Tan jacket. Take him to the police right now. And take it away. So he took him to the ground? The guy with the brown jacket took him to the ground.
Yeah, he took him to the ground and taken him to the ground. Not a hard chokehold, just enough to secure him, and the guy fought. And he kept holding him, all right? And then that's when everybody totally realized what was going on. And I think these guys on drugs, because when he came in, he was unbelievably off the charts. He scared the living daylights out.
How did he bring him down to the ground? Like he picked him up and throw him on the ground?
I think he stood up, grabbed him, turned him around, and put him to the ground.
Okay, so, that's pretty powerful evidence there. When this story first broke, there were two things that really bothered me about it. The first was, as someone who's ridden the subway thousands of times and have seen literally hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands of mentally unwell people going off on a rant on a platform or a train, I thought, oh, man, this happens all the time. What the hell happened here? Was this worse than the average time? Was this really that much more severe? And you see some real New Yorkers here. Daniel Penny's from Long Island, so he's not a city guy. But some real New Yorkers here seem to be corroborating that, this was not just your average run-of-the-mill rant on a subway from a mentally ill person. So that is pretty powerful in that sense. And, my take on this a year and a half ago didn't please anybody, and my take on this won't please anybody either, because while I do tend to agree with the verdict that this did not rise to the level of criminal negligence, I also don't think the praising of Daniel Penny as a hero is appropriate either. I don't think this should have happened. And the second problem that I had with this was, how does a Marine not know how to restrain a guy without choking him in a way that kills him? He's a Marine. He's a green belt in martial arts. This should not have happened. Now, like I said, that doesn't mean I don't agree with the verdict, because I am, if I do say so myself, I am one of the most steadfastly anti-incarceration people in this space. I believe there's an extremely high bar to clear when it comes to, is someone guilty of a crime that then warrants locking them in a cage for years of their life. Like, if there is not guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to vote not guilty. And so I'm not saying the jury made the wrong decision here, but I do think this was a tragic accident and a mistake that should not have happened. Anything before we go on? We have a lot more.
Yeah, so this story was one of the first stories where we had a certain portion of our audience that got angry at both of our takes.
Right.
In my case, at the time, I was pretty much saying what you're saying now. I probably still feel a little more strongly. I mean, at this point, we agree more information has come out that the fear that this person was going to turn violent was legitimate, that it wasn't the normal guy saying stuff on the subway car. Is he a hero? I think it's kind of beside the point. I think dishonest political actors are using it for their own purposes.
Well, that's why I think it's not beside the point.
But
That's why I
you
think
know
it's
what?
important.
Well, in terms of the moral evaluation, like, yeah, I mean, clearly the guy could have defended himself, so he wasn't really at risk. So he didn't have to do that. So in the end, yeah, I think he stepped up to protect people on that subway car. But what they're doing in terms of making him a hero, well, we talk about the woke versus the anti-woke grift. Well, it's the counterpart of what all the DEI race hustling grifters did when this went down, where they all tried to turn it into a racial issue, which it was clearly not. There was reporting at the time, which we just saw now in video, but you had quotes from very diverse people on that subway. This is New York City. We don't have all white people on a subway. That's not even possible. We just don't have those kinds of demographics here. So if you got a bunch of people on the subway saying, yeah, the guy, he stepped up, they're probably not a bunch of white Klansmen saying that.
Well, you just saw that in the body cam
Now we can see, right, Black, Asian, but the usual suspects, the hustlers, the grifters, they tried to turn it into a race issue that it clearly wasn't. And now you got these people on the other side trying to play up the fact his heroism, rather than, as we're going to get into on the B side of this, it's a tragedy all around. In terms of, should he have known how to restrain him without doing that? Yeah, I don't know why he didn't go for some kind of a hammer lock or something instead of a chokehold, which, you know, a chokehold can be dicey, even people who know what they're doing. That's why the police are not, post Eric Garner, they changed the rules. You're not supposed to use a chokehold by definition because accidents can happen. It sounds like what happened is he tried to do it loosely based on the witness testimony, and he kept struggling, and one thing leads to another. And it's just a tragedy. The real tragedy here is that this guy was in that. None of these people should have been in this position, because this guy should have been in a psychiatric institution, as we'll see. There was plenty of opportunity to commit him.
So we have plenty more here. Outside court, Neely's father and a family attorney expressed their disappointment with the jury's verdict and the broader criminal justice system. So here is Jordan Neely's father at the microphone.
I just want to say I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Now, I've seen on Twitter a lot of people, where were you for your son when he was homeless and all that? And look, to that, I would say, you know, Jordan Neely's mother was murdered and chopped up and put in a bag. Like, this is just the situation. I mean, this is just a level of immiseration that most people know nothing about. And so I'm not going to render any judgment on him or his dad or any of that. I know it's easy to do that in 280 characters or whatever there is. But yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Well, and again, I would go back to, it's a failure of the system. We had, while we were covering this when it happened, for years, I had a severely mentally ill person living in my building who was the son of the former landlord. And in the end, it was horrible that he inflicted this on his tenants. he couldn't have him in his house because he had fractured his ribs. He had attacked his father. Now, in the end, and he kept telling me that he kept trying to get him committed, and he could not get the city to do it. So it's not on the father. Clearly, Neely had very severe psychological problems that a civilian like his father is not equipped to deal with. That's not the answer. The system failed him. The city failed Neely, not his father.
Yes, I would agree with that. Penny and his team went to a bar in Lower Manhattan following his acquittal, according to an employee of the bar who spoke with CNN on the phone. Kenneth, the defense attorney, also posted a photo on Instagram of Penny, attorney Stephen Reiser, and himself holding drinks at the bar. Thank you, Kenneth wrote in the caption. So here is Daniel Penny at the bar after the verdict was handed down.
Yeah.
He's feeling good. He's feeling good. He's feeling good.
What's up?
We're
Come together. How's it going? How's it feel?
Feels great. He's finally got the justice he's deserved.
Did you think it was going to happen?
Sorry? No, we think that this should have happened probably on day one, but the important thing is it happened. So we can't control the timing of it, but we can certainly savor the outcome.
And why do you think it was not guilty?
That's
That's that guy. Well, he's not guilty on a few different reasons. Because his actions were justified. He was trying to help people on that train, and he did. And number two, he's not responsible for the death because the death was caused by a lot of other factors that we tried to present with a lot of clarity, such as the K2 abuse and the sickling crisis. And cardiac issues, not to mention the paranoid schizophrenia, which only added to that impact. So I'm just glad that the jury was able to truly evaluate that as a potential cause of death, and that Danny was justified in the actions that he took.
All right. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg issued a statement saying the office followed the facts and evidence from beginning to end and noted the jury's careful deliberation of the case. Their lengthy deliberation and the totality of the facts and the evidence underscored why this case was put in front of a jury of Mr. Penny's peers, he said in the statement. The jury has now spoken. At the Manhattan DA's office, we deeply respect the jury process, and we respect their verdict. New York Mayor Eric Adams connected Neely's death to his broader criticisms of the broken mental health system. Jordan should not have had to die, he said, and I strongly believe, as I've been stating probably from day one, we have a mental health system that is broken. When you have someone repeatedly going through that system, that's a signature of failure, and we need help in Albany and in the city council. We can't sit back and mourn the loss of someone that is caught up in the system when we're not taking action every day. So I agree with all of that. But a jury of his peers heard the case, saw all the facts and all the evidence, and made a decision. And I joined DA Bragg in stating that I respect the process, he said.
I'm just going to say, I believe that is very indicative of the post-Trump tone that Democrats are setting now. I think if this had been 2 years ago, you would have heard all the, particularly from Bragg, maybe not from Adams.
Not from Adams. I mean,
definitely from Bragg. You would have heard all the, this shows how hard it is for people of color to get justice in this city.
Well,
I read this as very much the whole Democratic Party is very chastened about hitting those kinds of notes. No, there is no way. Bragg brought the case in the first place, which you could argue never should have been brought.
See, I wouldn't argue it should have never been brought. I think this warranted an investigation. Now, of course,
It warranted an investigation.
I'm not a juror, but I don't know. I mean, I think in the end,
I think they've been chastened. I think they're afraid to hit that note now.
I mean, I think the evidence in the case was clear enough that the not guilty verdict was the proper verdict. But
that's not that. When is that ever stopped?
The guy out.
I respect the process.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, but I'm saying when you see them hitting that, especially Alvin Bragg, who is not shy about playing identity politics.
No.
For him on this very politically charged case that he certainly ginned up at the beginning to now say, yeah, I respect the process. That's a result of Trump's victory, I believe. I think they would have framed this very differently a couple of years ago.
The trial began with jury selection in late October and featured testimony, video, and 911 calls from subway riders, responding police officers, and martial arts and medical experts. The prosecution called more than 30 witnesses to the stand, including one man who helped restrain Neely's arms during the struggle and testified he advised Penny to loosen his grip. "I'm going to grab his hand so you can let go," Eric Gonzalez told Penny, according to his testimony. However, Gonzalez could be heard in video footage of the incident saying Penny wasn't squeezing Neely's neck in the 51 seconds before he released the chokehold. Gonzalez also testified he initially lied to investigators about what he saw. What's that? Oh, lied. Sorry about it.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. Gonzalez also testified he initially lied to investigators about what he saw and did on the subway out of fear he would be pinned for the killing. Prosecutors promised not to charge him in the case, he testified. Okay, so here is some video. This is part of that original report we played. But here is the martial arts instructor talking about the chokehold.
The witness also testified, a Marine who trained Daniel Penny. The combat instructor said if done right, the chokehold should knock out a person without killing them. But if held too long, the technique could end a person's life in a matter of minutes. Once the person is rendered unconscious, that's when you're supposed to let go, he told the jury. And Cynthia Harris, a city medical examiner, took the stand late yesterday telling jurors that Neely's cause of death was compression of the neck, consistent with the use of a chokehold.
All right, so I want to go through this a little bit because, like I said earlier, this was the second part of the story that didn't sit right with me. That the guy's a Marine and he can't restrain someone without choking him to death. That was always like, well, what happened there? Daniel Penny's martial arts instructor testifies in NYC subway chokehold death. So this was an article put out the day after this testimony. Prosecutors called Joseph Kaballer, Penny's Marine Corps martial arts instructor, to the stand. He testified Penny attained a green belt, which is like a moderate belt, I guess. During training, he said warnings are given not to hold a choke longer than 5 seconds. On cross, he told defense attorneys 5 seconds is not applicable to a real-world situation, saying a, quote, situation dictates. Kaballer told the jury applying a choke properly would, quote, render your aggressor unconscious. Then they're told to release pressure immediately, otherwise it could lead to injury or death. Kaballer explained a blood choke is when pressure is applied to carotid arteries on both sides of the neck and shoulder, render someone unconscious in between 8 to 13 seconds. He explained an air choke is when pressure is applied directly to the trachea and would take 2 to 3 minutes for someone to lose consciousness. Because it would take that long, he explained, it is not taught. Prosecutors took him frame by frame through Penny's hold on Neely. At times, he testified Penny appeared to be doing a figure 4 variation, a form of a blood choke, but that he didn't appear to be doing it correctly. In one particular frame, Kaballer said it appeared Penny's forearm was pressing against Neely's trachea. So is this an improper blood choke? Prosecutors asked. Yeah, Kaballer said. Is it potentially lethal? Prosecutors asked. Yes, absolutely, Kaballer said. On cross-examination, defense attorneys asked, it may also be there is low pressure to the trachea and more to the right side of the neck. Correct, Kaballer said. So someone could stay in a chokehold for longer than 13 seconds and not be rendered unconscious if they're not applying pressure, defense attorneys asked. Correct, Kaballer said. He also said it was hard to tell if pressure was being applied or not at certain times in the video, and that during a struggle, arm placements can shift sometimes, impacting the trachea. Kaballer added he couldn't tell from the video whether Penny was ever applying a full blood or air choke. Okay, so we'll read this last. This is from the CNN article that I was using. The city medical examiner who performed Neely's autopsy, testifying for the prosecution, ruled the cause of his death was compression of neck, chokehold. She made the determination after performing an autopsy and watching the cell phone video on the subway, but did not wait for the toxicology report, she testified. The defense presented its own medical expert who said Neely died of a combination of factors, including a sickling crisis linked to his sickle cell trait, a schizophrenic episode, the struggle and restraint by Penny, and K2 intoxication. Okay, so this is where I have to go back to my original take, which is sure to please no one, which is that I believe there is some evidence here of negligence. I do. He's a Marine. He's an intermediate martial artist. He placed the guy in a chokehold. The martial artist instructor said he didn't apply it the right way. To me, that is some evidence to say that this was negligent. Now, on a jury, some evidence is not enough. Evidence has to cross the threshold of true beyond a reasonable doubt. That is where, as a juror, I have to, with some reservation, endorse the verdict, because there's just not proof. There's just not proof. And without proof, I can't vote to lock a guy in a cage without proof. I just can't get there. But this idea that, no, there was nothing wrong with this, he was a he behaved perfectly, as we're going to see some of the chuds, that's nonsense. You can't say behave perfectly. This was a mistake. This was an error. We know it was an error. By definition, it was an accident. So, to me, that's where this next part gets into some, I think, irresponsible commentary on this, which we'll get into in a minute. But go ahead.
Yeah, look, I'm not a martial arts expert, and I wasn't in the situation, so I'm hesitant to, make a judgment in that way. I don't understand why. There are other holds that I know from wrestling that do not involve anything that could possibly be fatal. So I don't understand, if you have that kind of training, why you wouldn't choose one of many holds to immobilize without killing. That is true. I think he made a terrible mistake. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Clearly, he meant well. I don't think no one is saying he meant.
Even the prosecutor said he didn't mean it. Right.
And nobody thinks he was trying to do that. I think he definitely made an error in judgment in choosing a type of hold that is notorious for having unpredictable results.
Right. And the question is, does that rise to criminal negligence? That's the question. And to me, if I can't say that beyond a reasonable doubt, I have to vote not guilty. That's why at the end of the day, I can't say I disagree with the verdict, but it does hurt. It stings. This was a fuck up. This was a fuck up. This was not, well, we'll get to this part. Okay, so here we go. These fucking people now. Daniel Penny now has his freedom. He should also have the Medal of Freedom for the courage he displayed on the train that day and during the ordeal that followed. Maybe with Trump coming in, that might actually happen. Daniel Penny needs to leave NYC and never return. Come down here to Tennessee. We'll welcome you like the hero you are. Well, apparently, Matt, you've never been to Long Island, because Long Island's pretty fucking cringe, too.
Or Staten Island, they'll be very happy.
Or Staten Island. He's got some options happy. A little closer to
move to Howard Beach.
Yeah. Tennessee, that's a little extreme.
Doesn't have to go that far. I also want to remind y'all, Matt Walsh is the same guy who tried to say that people were reacting the way they did to the death of the CEO because he's white.
No, a lot of these fucking people, and this is why, I don't think it was a racist incident, but the commentary, there's a lot of schadenfreude from these fucking scumbags that a white guy choked a black guy to death.
Right. Well, this is any way you slice it. Yeah. And I, from the beginning, was arguing, hey, if you've never been in that situation on a train, you don't understand. There's a reason. He had reason to feel these people were threatened, especially as information came out about the people he really did severely attack.
Well, that's the thing. That's important evidence because, look, it's one thing for an out-of-towner to get spooked, right, and overreact because they're not used to dealing with, people like that on the subway. The fact that you had clear born and bred New Yorkers tell the cops, no, this was especially alarming.
This was, well, and there's
Yeah.
reason to believe it because he had bashed people's faces in the past.
Exactly.
But everyone should be reacting to this if you're a decent human being, as is a terrible situation no one involved should have been in. Penny shouldn't have been in that situation. Neely shouldn't have been in that situation. It didn't have to go down like this. He had been in psychiatric treatment centers multiple times. He was well known to the authorities. He was on a special list of 50 most at-risk people that they keep.
Right.
And what was he on that? Why was he on that train? Why was he walking around the streets like that?
Exactly. Greg Gutfeld. Hooray for Daniel Penny and those heroes who risk everything to help others. And a more than deserved fuck you to Alvin Bragg. Jack Posobiec. Daniel Penny did nothing wrong. In fact, Daniel Penny did everything right. Now, this is what I say. How can you say he did everything right? The martial arts instructor said he either applied the wrong chokehold or he applied what would have been an appropriate chokehold the wrong way. So how can you say he did everything right? I mean, that's just factually not true. If he did everything right, the guy would be dead.
Because they're grifters too. This is the irony. Look, yeah, Alvin Bragg is definitely one of those political figures who likes to play identity politics. But so is Jack Posobiec. So is Matt Walsh. It's just the other side of it. It's the same very dishonest spin on a complicated situation.
Exactly. All right. So these are replies to Jack Posobiec's tweet. Yes, he did. More men should act like this when others are in danger. This is a huge win for society. You do not want to live in a society where men are afraid to protect others from violent criminals if they fear they will be punished for it. Piers Morgan announced the verdict. Breaking, Daniel Penny is cleared justice for a hero. Shocking that this ever came to court. Now, he had a panel here. We're only going to hear his take on this because this was very long. We could have done a whole segment on this. But here's Piers Morgan's take on this, more or less, in
is that Taylor Lorenz?
Yep, he had Taylor Lorenz, Tommy Lahren, and
she
Mark
took the mask
Lamont
off
Hill.
for the segment?
Yeah, I guess she was in her own private room there. Yeah. All right, here we go.
That a war hero, the idea that a war hero is in his civilian life on a subway and watches a completely deranged lunatic threatening to kill people, and he apprehends him and prevents him from harming anybody, and in the process, clearly, accidentally, didn't mean to do this, the guy falls unconscious and then he dies. And it's a tragic accident that happened, but it was entirely precipitated by this deranged lunatic going on a subway and threatening to kill people. A subway system.
Which I'm just going to point out, why are you using that language, man?
Well, Mark Lamont Hill calls him out for that.
Like it's tragic. It's sad.
Right.
It's sad. This isn't a guy to heap scorn.
No, well, this is what I mean. They call him a maniac.
But for the grace of God.
Right.
And by the way, in New York, where people have been...
I'm glad you paused it there. We don't have this as part of the piece because this was minutes later, but Mark Lamont Hill does call him on that. He says, you're calling this guy a deranged lunatic. What he is a mentally ill person.
Right.
Like you're using very charged language to describe this guy, which shows a complete lack of sympathy for this guy, which, yes, is somewhat a function of the fact that he's a black man. Yes, there is. That's true. Piers Morgan, this is a fucking, I mean, this is, I mean, I got to watch what I say here. But Piers Morgan, the tears he shed for the death of the Queen tells you who he is. How anyone, how any Indian person could have a bad word to say about the Queen after she died. That tells you what he is. He's a fucking racist piece of shit. That's who Piers Morgan is, and it comes through in that language. A lot of times it slips out in subconscious ways. Yes. Sure. Right. Whew, I'd hate to get censored for this, of all things, on this show. But all right, here we go.
Threatened to kill people. A subway system, by the way, in New York, where people have been killed quite regularly in recent years.
Oh, yeah, we got it. Okay,
no, they haven't.
Well, we're going to get to that. Okay, so I got to back this up because we have to vet this claim.
Happened, but it was entirely precipitated by this deranged lunatic going on a subway and threatening to kill people. A subway system, by the way, in New York, where people have been killed quite regularly in recent years. This guy is a hero, and yet he was treated like a criminal.
Okay, so a subway system where people have been killed quite regularly in recent years.
He should have had Cash Jordan on for this.
Yeah, no, exactly. That is an absolute lie, an absolute lie. And this is why I think it is important, not just from a culture war perspective, but from a public safety standpoint, to not turn Daniel Penny into a hero who modeled great behavior. Because I will tell you, as someone who lived in New York City for a while, as someone who spent my whole life in commuting distance of New York City and has gone to New York City for a while, you get on the subway, odds are better than 50-50 you're going to run into a person who's acting in a way that might make a person who's not used to dealing with that somewhat uncomfortable. But the risk to your life on the New York City subways, contrary to what Piers Morgan just said, is absolutely minimal. Now, the New York Post will try and scare you with bullshit like this, and this is probably where Piers Morgan gets this idea. Murders soar 60% on New York City subways, nearing record. This was published in the New York Post September of this year. So that sounds pretty crazy. You might think, Keaton, what are you saying? Murders are up 60%. Murders across the city subway system have surged 60% so far this year, a troubling trend as overall crime on the rails has dipped. So how many murders are we up to now? What's the 60% surge brought us to? 8. 8 people have been slaughtered on subway cars or in stations as of September 8th, up from just 5 during the same period last year, according to NYPD data. The spike in killings is approaching the 25-year high set in 2022 with 10 murders. From 1997 to 2020, there were never more than 5 murders in the subway in a single year, according to the earliest public NYPD data. The jump in murders persists despite a slew of high-profile initiatives that have helped tamp down an early-year surge in crime underground. Heavily trafficked stations were flooded with 750 National Guardsmen, while an additional 1,000 NYPD officers were deployed to monitor the subway system. So 8 murders this year. The median over the last 25 years, about 5 murders. You know how many trips there are taken on the New York City subway every year? You know how many people boarded a train? Or how many trains were boarded by a person, because obviously people take the trains multiple times a year. You know how many subway trips there were, train trips? Over 2 billion. 2 billion subway rides. 5 murders a year. Up to 8 murders a year now. Out of 2 billion. You do the math, it's like 1 in 250 million. These odds are as though there's 1 murder a year in the entire United States. You have as good odds of being that one person in the whole country. If there were 1 murder a year committed in the whole country, you have a better chance of being that one person than you do of being killed on the New York City subway. And Piers Morgan says, well, people get killed regularly on the subway now. So you say, well, maybe murders are up slightly, but maybe overall crime is up too. Well, no, total subway crime has decreased nearly 6% this year, compared with the same period in 2023. Robberies down 18, felony assaults dropping 5, according to an NYPD spokesperson. Violent crime remains well above pre-pandemic levels, however, and strap hangers continue to sweat whether their next ride will be on the Murder Express, the editorializing from the New York Post, of course.
Because of fine outlets like your own.
Right.
They might feel that way. Doesn't mean it's real.
Exactly. You don't know if you're going to make it home, retiree Vicky Reeves, 68, bemoaned while making a rare subway trip at the Times Square station.
You can always find one.
Yeah. And look at one more thing here. Angela McArdle, Libertarian Party chair, huge win for humanity. Now, that is a depraved statement on multiple levels. Yeah. Number one, the reason I put this where I put it is because you guys are the ones who canceled Chase Oliver for wearing a mask. Now, I have to say, I'm not a mask wearer myself, but I just gave you the numbers. 8 in 2 billion. You're actually much more likely to die of COVID than you are to get murdered on the subway. So the reason I say that is because to people who think that this is model behavior and that you ought to initiate a violent confrontation with anyone who you perceive to be a threat to people's safety on the subway, let me tell you something. If you're an out-of-towner and you come in and you do that, odds are you're going to overreact to someone who's not a threat, and you're going to make the situation much, much worse than it could have been. That is what it will happen if this behavior is modeled, if Daniel Penny is put up there as an exemplar of what everybody should do and what they perceive to be that situation. 999 out of 1,000 of these types of situations are not as severe as this one. And my main concern out of this is that now people are going to say, well, self-defense is legal in New York City, which means anybody who's causing a problem, we can just go at them. And in someone who's ridden the subway thousands of times, I know Russell can vouch for me on this, 999 out of every 1,000 times at least, you're better off just minding your business. And I don't think that's as likely to happen now because of this. And just, again, to call this a win for humanity, as if there's anything to celebrate in this story, is fucking depraved. Fucking sick and depraved.
Yeah, I think we can find a compromise position. There is a very loud Caribbean Jesus freak who rides the A line. If anyone wants to apply vigilantism to him, I'd be more than willing to back you up in court. There are people who will dance with a boombox, who will stick their foot 2 inches from your nose as if that's charming. That would maybe require some vigilantism to intervene on. But most of the mentally ill people just mind their own business. Now, what's really depraved about look, I am of the opinion that this guy did do something to protect other people. I
have to repeat it. I don't disagree with the verdict. I would have voted not guilty because I don't think the evidence rises to beyond a doubt.
Right. Yeah. So we agree that the guy did he meant well.
Yeah.
Now, to react to it as a triumph for humanity and not as a tragic situation where Penny should not have had to do that, and this guy should not have been there to do it in the first place because he had been in and out of the system. That is what makes this a tragic situation. And as you point out, yeah, there are crazy situations all over New York. There are a lot of mentally ill people. I mentioned this on the show when I came back from Europe. I wasn't used to it. This is about a year ago now. I was in Italy and Greece for a month, and one of the biggest elements of culture shock for me, probably the biggest, so it took me like a week or two to get used to people just talking to themselves on the subway again, because we're so trained here to just accept that severely mentally ill people are left on the street to fend for themselves with no help from anybody. And we just ignore that. It becomes part of the culture. They become invisible to you. I no joke. I was waiting because I just will not pay $80 to take an Uber from the airport. So I was waiting for the subway at like 2:00 in the morning to go home when I got back. And there were two girls from Paris on the platform with me. And they get on the train and they turn around and get off. I get on. There is a woman naked from the waist down yelling on the train car. That was my first reintroduction to my native land. Didn't see any shit like that in Greece or Italy. And you know what? Those are not the richest countries in the EU. Those are among the poorest countries in the EU. And you don't see things like that. It is a very uniquely American thing as far as Western countries go, that you just leave people like that. And the idea, and again, I'm not throwing shade at Penny by saying this, I'm really not. But the idea that vigilantism as a response to desperate mental illness is something to celebrate. That is a reflection of the worst of the American psyche, self-image, and national character.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's very well said. And before we go on to the next part of the piece, we'll take a little bit of super chats in between. I just want to say, because I don't want people to mistake what I said to mean that Penny should have just minded his own business. No, I think he did what he tried to do the right thing by intervening to protect people, since this guy was getting up in people's face and making explicit threats. I'm not saying he should have minded his own business. I think he made a mistake in how he handled it, which is pretty obvious. I mean, it's obvious. The martial arts teacher said he either applied the wrong chokehold or he applied it the wrong way, and the guy's dead. Right? Now, once again, I don't believe that the evidence is there to prove that that mistake rises to criminal negligence. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying he should have minded his own business in this situation. I'm saying I know New Yorkers and I know tourists. Okay, I lived in New York City. I worked in tourism. What I fear is going to happen much more often now is an out-of-towner is going to get on the subway at Times Square, and a homeless guy's going to shake a cup in his face and say, "You got him," and he's going to fucking go at him. He's going to think, "Here we go again. This is another Jordan Neely thing," and then you're going to have a violent incident where you could just say what I've said thousands of times to people, which is, "Sorry, man, I don't have anything." Right? Yep. And in that case, they walk away, no matter how scary they look. When you tell them, "Sorry, I don't got," they leave you alone. That's all it has to do. And I'm afraid that because of this verdict, you're going to have a lot of the former. You're going to have a lot of people thinking, "Here we go again. We got another Neely on our hand." And I'm telling you, that's not good. So listen, if you're from Middle America and you idolize Daniel Penny, Uber and Lyft. The subway is not for you. You don't have the fortitude. This is the other thing that drives me crazy about this is these people like to pound their chests as if they're big men for thinking how bravely he acted. You know what? You're a fucking pussy. Get in a cab, get where you have to go in your car in privacy. You don't have the fortitude to ride the subway if you're going to react hysterically to a guy who poses no threat. I am not saying that Jordan Neely posed no threat and that Daniel Penny was wrong to act. I'm saying people are going to take from this that they are the next vigilante in a situation that could be diffused very easily by a simple, "Sorry, man." That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to point out whenever I hear these kinds of things, do I look like I'm from the muscle end of the family? You know, I've lived in New York pretty much my entire life without incident. How dangerous could it be? I was a tour guide for 10 years, riding the subway, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day.
8 murders and 2 billion rides. That says it all.
Nothing.
That says it all.
No, this is why some of you know his channel. I did a whole thing about it at the live show. This is a whole grift. He's not the only one who does it. The LA is falling apart. San Francisco is falling apart. Now, I can't speak to those. Our friend Lee Fong said that's exaggerated, but I don't know. I'm not there. But I can tell you in terms of New York, wow, that is some grift. That is some grift, man. This guy, Cash Jordan, he has a channel where all he does is lie about what's happening in New York. But people like that morality tale because a lot of people feel that New York, you know, like San Francisco, like LA, it's one of those blue liberal cities that have turned their back on God or whatever. And so, you know, hearing that it's falling apart, that it's collapsing, they love that myth. They love that story. So he'll just say, "And so it begins." Almost every title to his videos have that in the title card. It begins. People stop paying for the subway. Don't come here and try to do that.
Of course, it's ridiculous. So this whole thing, you know, in the New York Post, they sell papers out of it. The Murder Express. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, what a ridiculous headline. You know, so anyway. All right, well, let's take a few super chats and we'll get to the B part of this because that's equally substantive. SB, thanks for the $5. Good news, guys. You replied to John Favreau, made it on the Reddit Clever Comeback subreddit yesterday. Oh, that's cool. Keep getting bigger. Thank you.
Did it?
Perfect. Yeah, we ratioed him hard on that one. That was fun. Durinden, never thought I would agree with Taylor Lorenz, but she could not be more right. Man G. All right, well, I can't read that out loud, and we should laugh about big old, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Appreciate that. Wow, I'm surprised YouTube let you write that one. That's interesting. It's their fault, not mine. Don't blame me. I just read it. You're the guys who let it through. Ha ha. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $50. Let's have another sound drop for Michael Castillo over here. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you, my friend. On this date in 1981, one of the largest massacres occurred, which was known as the El Mazote Massacre, where the Salvadorian army, backed by the U.S., killed over 900 civilians over 2 days. Then the overdrive cover-up by the Reagan administration. Thank you for that, Michael. I'm going to put a
blasphemy against you. Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
Are you Jesus Christ, you loser? That doesn't get old. That's a good piece of sound.
That was a good one.
Theater in a Fire, thanks to the $5. The hate in the chat from the left and the right for your takes on Penny demonstrate your analysis impartial and accurate. Great job. Thanks, Theater in a Fire.
Thank you.
Well, this is what I
Thank
said.
you.
This is a take where you don't please anyone. I said that going in, and, sometimes a disclaimer works. Sometimes it doesn't. You got to give it anyway because that's what it is. Our government will spend trillions to blow up every single baby in Gaza, Syria, and Lebanon before they give us a dime of health care. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, there you go. Kawaii Cowboy says the contrast of the media celebrating terrorists overthrowing a murderous dictator and then immediately celebrate catching, a man rebelling against murderous healthcare with the exact same seriousness. Yeah, exactly. These people glorify violence against innocent people all the time. That's what Zionism is. You're glorifying violence against the innocent. And then, that's why I said I joked. But with the Syria thing, the first time we covered it on Rumble because, usually the people who you're not allowed to say you support are the people who the United States government wants you to support in Syria. If you said you support those organizations in any other context, you'd get thrown off YouTube. But in this context, that's what they want you to do. I mean, it's just, the hypocrisy is just in plain sight.
Yesterday we were at war with Eurasia.
Exactly.
Today we're allies with Eurasia and at war with East Asia.
Right. These rebel groups, if you said a kind word about them in any other context, they would muzzle you. They would censor you.
Yeah,
but in Syria, they want you to back them. It's just it's unbelievable. All right, let's go to B part of this.
Okay, so this is really the way that I think we should be talking about the Penny and Jordan Neely tragedy, and it is a tragedy. So Jordan Neely had a long history of mental health issues before tragic NYC subway chokehold death. So there's a whole timeline here of this guy literally begging for mental health services that he didn't receive. In some instances, Jordan Neely told cops he was schizophrenic and hadn't taken his meds. Other times, the 30-year-old complained to officers of stomach pains or told them he was suicidal, police sources said. He had accepted help from the Bowery Residence Committee via the New York City Department of Homeless Services at times through at least 2020, the sources said. But one thing is clear. Neely never got the help he so desperately needed. And this is the New York Post, by the way.
Yeah, this is the New York Post. This is the Murder Express paper. Yeah.
Yes. Even they're saying this. As his, quote, as his aunt, as his blood, I was crying out for medical help for my nephew, but everything was about insurance. Funny how everything comes back to that, isn't it? His aunt, Carolyn Neely, told the Post. Doctors knew his condition. He needed to be treated. He wasn't a bad person, she continued, adding that Neely was in and out of Bellevue Hospital. Quote, he just needed better help from doctors who did not give him help when I asked, she said. I was really frustrated. I didn't know what to do anymore. Neely, who sank into a deep depression after his stepfather brutally murdered his mom in 2007, began crossing paths with cops in earnest about 6 years later, police sources said. He was known as a troubled street person who hung around Lower Manhattan, especially around East Houston, but he turned up in Harlem, Queens, and Brooklyn as well. On the afternoon of January 24th, 2013, for instance, cops found Neely on West 145th Street in Manhattan complaining that his body was numb and he was hearing voices. He voluntarily went to Mount Sinai Morningside for treatment, police sources said, but he appeared to worsen in the following years. This is all the way back in 2013. And you're going to see he gets worse and worse and worse over time. On January 14th, 2016, sources said cops brought him to the hospital when he said he was suicidal. 8 months later, authorities again escorted him to the hospital after they got several complaints of an irate, intoxicated man threatening others around West 168th Street. By 2018, police were seeing Neely frequently, 4 times in February and twice in March, sources said. Sometimes they brought him to the hospital or a shelter. Sometimes he refused to go. That July, cops took him to the hospital after he threatened the conductor and scared passengers on a train that had left the 207th Street station, sources said. You see how this is escalating? as he's
Right.
not getting the services he requested.
Right. And it just gets more and more severe.
A series of near monthly calls followed for the rest of the year. In February 2019, he told the cops that he wanted psychiatric help because he was hearing voices, sources said. Right here, why was this man not institutionalized? A member of the citywide mobile crisis outreach team saw him wandering aimlessly on a train platform around Norfolk Street on March 12, 2020. He was disheveled and smelled, police sources said, and he'd been off his meds for months. He was brought to Bellevue Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation, though it's not clear what happened after. The crisis team found him 4 more times during the height of the COVID pandemic, once in April 2020 and 3 times in May. The team encouraged Neely to use the city's homeless services, but he appears to have rarely stayed in a hospital or shelter for very long. Cops continued to engage over the next year with the homeless Neely, who often mentioned that he was schizophrenic, had ADHD, and was sometimes suicidal. So now this is interesting because this article focuses on this, but not the assaults. But another article that focuses on the assaults basically picks up from where the timeline here leaves off. So this is Fox News, a related organization. Jordan Neely had history of attacks on subway before New York City chokehold death. The 30-year-old vagrant, who once performed as a Michael Jackson impersonator, had been arrested dozens of times, including most recently for vicious assaults on subway riders, court records show. And you see we left off at 2020, now 2021. Neely socked a 67-year-old woman as she exited the Bowery station in the East Village in Lower Manhattan. The woman sustained a broken nose, a fractured orbital bone, and, quote, bruising, swelling, and substantial pain to the back of her head in the November 12th attack, according to a criminal complaint. Neely pleaded guilty to felony assault February 9th in exchange for a 15-month alternative to incarceration program, according to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He was supposed to stay in a treatment facility and abstain from drugs. If he had completed the program, the felony assault would have been reduced to a misdemeanor, but he skipped a compliance court date and left the facility. I just want to point out how insane a system that would take somebody like this who's severely mentally ill and give them a conditional release like this without any support services and expect them to be able to manage that. How would he even know what day he's supposed to be back in court under his circumstances?
Of course. And the reaction to this incident, not the verdicts, to be clear, but the reaction to this incident suggests that when people like this act up, it's okay to just do whatever you want to them. That's it.
Right. Like, why aren't you furious with the city for putting both Penny and Neely in that situation? It never should have happened.
Exactly.
A warrant was issued for his arrest on February 23rd. It wasn't immediately clear how long he spent in jail awaiting the resolution of the assault case. From January 2020 to August 2021, he was arrested for public lewdness after pulling down his pants and exposing himself to a female stranger, misdemeanor assault for hitting a woman in the face, and criminal contempt for violating a restraining order. All 3 cases were dismissed as part of his February 9th plea deal. In June 2019, Neely attacked Philemon Castillo Baltazar, 68, on the platform of the West 4th Street station in Greenwich Village, according to the court papers. Quote, out of nowhere, he punched me in the face, the victim told the New York Daily News. He said he'd seen Neely looking for food in the trash bins. 1 month prior, he hit a man so hard in the face that he broke his nose on the platform of the Broadway Lafayette station, the same subway stop where he died 4 years later. For both 2019 cases, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. Outreach workers were so familiar with Neely that he was on the city's top 50 list, an internal roster kept by the Department of Homeless Services of people living on the street who were most in need of help, the New York Post reported. He had cycled in and out of hospitals and jails for years. Now, It's insane that you would even have a list like that, because why are they out on the street? Why are they out on the street? If you have a list of this top 50, why aren't they either in a shelter or in a psychiatric services home? Now, a lot has been made of, oh, well, the laws need to be changed. No, they don't. Not in his case. The laws are perfectly adequate to have committed him. You have the involuntary commitment standard. Person has a mental illness for which care and treatment in a mental hospital is essential to his/her welfare. Person's judgment is too impaired for him/her to understand the need for such care and treatment. As a result of his/her mental illness, the person poses a substantial threat of harm to self or others. Boom. It's right there. Right there. You legally, he should never have been on the street. It's not that the laws are too lax. He was the poster child for the person who qualifies for involuntary commitment under the current laws, under the current standards. So why are there so many mentally ill people on the street? Now, Neely is an extreme example. I mentioned in the previous segment, the New York Times did an excellent report on how the system fails people and it can lead to violence. But even they, in a 10-year span, were only able to find 97 cases in a city of 8 million or 8.5 million, depending on what stat you look at, people, 97 incidents in a 10-year period. So this doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So why are these people not in?
Oh,
now
sorry. No, I apologize. Hold on. I muted you. I meant to mute myself because my kids were screaming, but I muted you. So you got to go back a sentence. I apologize about that. It was my fault.
Okay. Where did we leave off? Obviously, we'll cut around this.
Yeah, just back up if you said. Just, at the beginning of this exhibit.
Okay. All right. So why is it that you have all of these mentally ill people on the street? You didn't have this in the 50s, right? We don't think of 1950s cities being full of mentally ill people walking around the street because they were institutionalized. So there was a big movement beginning in the 50s with the introduction of Thorazine. That's really where it began, to deinstitutionalize people. Now, this is from a special Frontline did. Now, this is quoting from a book, Out of the Shadows, Confronting America's Mental Illness Crisis, that was written in the 90s, so it stops there, but the situation has not improved. So the history is still, and the numbers are still relevant. Deinstitutionalization is the name given to the policy of moving severely mentally ill people out of large state institutions and then closing part or all of those institutions. Deinstitutionalization began in 1955 with the widespread introduction of chlorpromazine, commonly known as Thorazine, the first effective antipsychotic medication, and received a major impetus 10 years later with the enactment of federal Medicaid and Medicare. The magnitude of deinstitutionalization of the severely mentally ill qualifies it as one of the largest social experiments in American history. In 1955, there were 558,239 severely mentally ill patients in the nation's public psychiatric hospitals. In 1994, this number had been reduced by 486,620 patients to 71,619. It is important to note, however, that the census of 558,239 patients in public psychiatric hospitals in 1955 was in relationship to the nation's total population at the time, which was 164 million. By 1994, the nation's population had increased to 260 million. If there had been the same proportion of patients per population in public mental health hospitals in 1994 as there had been in 1955, the patients would have totaled 885,010. The true magnitude of deinstitutionalization, then, is the difference between 885,010 and 71,619. In effect, approximately 92% of the people who would have been living in public psychiatric hospitals in 1955 were not living there in 1994. Now, this is a book from 30 years ago. We can assume the situation has not improved. It might actually be worse proportionately than it was when this was written. So there you can see when they introduced the first antipsychotic drugs, and then Medicaid and Medicare. Now we'll get into this a little bit. Why did Medicaid and Medicare being enacted lead to such a drop? Because they didn't cover institutionalization. So it disincentivized states and cities from institutionalizing people because they couldn't get reimbursement from Medicaid and Medicare for it. Most of those who were deinstitutionalized in the nation's public psychiatric hospitals were severely mentally ill. Between 50 and 60% of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia. Another 10 to 15% were diagnosed with manic depressive illness and severe depression. An additional 10 to 15% were diagnosed with organic brain diseases, epilepsy, strokes, Alzheimer's diseases, and brain damage secondary to trauma. The remaining individuals residing in public psychiatric hospitals had conditions such as mental retardation with psychosis, autism, and other psychiatric disorders of childhood, and alcoholism and drug addiction with concurrent brain damage. The fact that most deinstitutionalized people suffer from various forms of brain dysfunction was not as well understood when the policy of deinstitutionalization got underway. Thus, deinstitutionalization has helped create the mental illness crisis by discharging people from public psychiatric hospitals without ensuring that they receive the medication and rehabilitation services necessary for them to live successfully in the community. Deinstitutionalization further exacerbated the situation because once the public psychiatric beds had been closed, they were not available for people who later became mentally ill. And this situation continues up to the present. So you have a combination of factors here. Hey, look, I'm a big fan of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I read it at a very impressionable age. It made a big impression on me. I get that there were horrors to that system. They started out with good intentions, but eventually those institutions became overcrowded and horrible. They were actually built to get the mentally ill out of jails, because they very often were winding up in jails. That's why they started building psychiatric institutions. There was a good intention there at first. And many of them, not all of them, but many of them were run in a pretty decent way that tried to give people a sense of community. Up in Buffalo, actually, there's a Frederick Law Olmsted designed grounds of a psychiatric hospital that he created with a lot of open space and grass for mental health so people could get fresh air and walk around. And it's a beautiful campus, a little creepy now, but it's quite lovely. But eventually they became overcrowded dumping grounds, just horrible. And that's where you get the impression of those One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of institutions. So this seemed at first like a very humanitarian gesture, like, hey, we can integrate them into the community. But part of that plan was supposed to be funding community health centers so that they'd have a kind of constant outpatient support. That never happened. So to continue on that score, so Mother Jones did a good timeline on the history of this, and just selecting a few relevant portions of it. So 1963, so you have 1955, you have the beginning of this collapse in inpatient treatment because of the introduction of Thorazine. So 1963, John F. Kennedy signs the Community Mental Health Act to provide federal funding for the construction of community-based preventive care and treatment facilities. Between the Vietnam War and an economic crisis, the program was never adequately funded. 1965, with the passage of Medicaid, states are incentivized to move patients out of state mental hospitals and into nursing homes and general hospitals because the program excludes coverage for people in institutions for mental diseases. That's what it's really about. That's why they won't institutionalize a guy like Neely, because they don't want to pay for it.
Right.
67, the California legislature passes the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act, which makes involuntary hospitalization of mentally ill people vastly more difficult. 1 year after the law goes into effect, the number of mentally ill people in the criminal justice system doubles. There are 650 community health facilities serving, in 1977, 1.9 million mentally ill patients a year. 1980, President Jimmy Carter signs the Mental Health Systems Act, which aims to restructure the community mental health center program and improve services for people with chronic mental illness. 1981, Ronald Reagan. What a surprise. Under President Ronald Reagan, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act repeals Carter's community health legislation and establishes block grants for the states, ending the federal government's role in providing services to the mentally ill. Federal mental health spending decreases by 30%. 1984, an Ohio-based study finds that up to 30% of homeless people are thought to suffer from serious mental illness. 85, federal funding drops to 11% of community mental health agency budgets. 90, clozapine, the first atypical antipsychotic drug to be developed, is approved by the FDA as a treatment for schizophrenia. 2004, studies suggest approximately 16% of prison and jail inmates are seriously mentally ill, roughly 320,000 people. This year, there are about 100,000 psychiatric beds in public and private hospitals. That means there are more than 3 times as many seriously mentally ill people in jails and prisons than in hospitals. 2009, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, states are forced to cut $4.35 billion in public mental health spending over the next 3 years, the largest reduction in funding since deinstitutionalization. 2010, there are 43,000 psychiatric beds in the United States, or about 14 beds per 100,000 people, the same ratio as in 1850. So that is how we got here in brief. So now, speaking of the laws, Adams, really since the Neely incident, has really been pushing this idea that we need a more liberal standard for involuntarily institutionalizing people. Right now, it's a harm to yourself or others. He wants to expand that standard. So he called a meeting with Community Board 5, which is in Midtown Times Square. But even the community board wasn't going for it, and this is why. Quote, what's clear is that we have hundreds and hundreds of people who already meet the current standard and can't get the help they need. Mary Brosnahan of Coalition for the Homeless said, they're begging to be admitted, but there's no capacity. Why aren't you focused on that? The Adams administration has called on state legislators for over a year to change the mental hygiene law so that involuntary hospitalization would be justified in circumstances that extend beyond the current standard of serious harm to oneself or others. The Brownstein bill, backed by City Hall, would allow involuntary hospitalizations on the grounds of, quote, substantial inability of the person to meet his or her basic need for food, clothing, shelter, or medical care. Okay, so first of all, if you're not meeting the needs of people who already meet the current standard, how are you going to have the facilities for an expanded standard? This is just a complete smokescreen of lack of funding. So finally, from the Hastings Center, they address these questions of how you would enact this. According to a 2018 report by the Manhattan Institute, non-forensic state psychiatric centers in New York City lost about 15% of their total adult bed capacity from 2014 to 2018. During roughly the same period from 2015 to 2017, the number of seriously mentally ill homeless New Yorkers increased by 22%. And every year from 2014 to 2018, there was a rise in the number of emotionally disturbed person calls responded to by the New York City Police Department. The lack of capacity of psychiatric institutions is not a new problem. As a result of deinstitutionalization, a movement beginning in the 1950s that moved psychiatric patients out of state institutions and into communities, many mental health care facilities closed. The significant reduction of beds for psychiatric patients means that many people with severe mental illness who need residential treatment cannot receive it. The problem is reflected in decreasing lengths of stay for patients in New York State psychiatric hospitals. The consequences of involuntarily committing people before addressing the shortages within psychiatric centers will be significant. Mentally ill and homeless people currently cycle through the criminal justice system. People who are homeless are more likely to wind up in jail, and formerly incarcerated people are 13 times more likely to experience homelessness than the general population. Additionally, it is estimated that 44% of people incarcerated in jail and 37% of people incarcerated in prison have a mental health condition. With New York City's new plan, it is not difficult to imagine an outcome in which mentally ill homeless people also cycle in and out of psychiatric institutions. Okay, so this is really the problem with the conversation. As so often happens, you have a very complex problem that really needs to be addressed by better funding for services for the vulnerable. And instead, the grifters on both sides want to turn it into a culture war shout down, which is completely beside the point and not helping anybody. Whether it's the grifters calling this incident race-based, or whether it's the grifters playing up the heroism of Penny, who, again, I'm not disparaging Penny. I think he stepped up to protect those people. But that's not even what the story is about. The story should properly be understood as a tragic situation that should never have happened, that is the result of decades of misguided policy and unwillingness to protect the most vulnerable people in society.
I think that's very well put. And I think that, this whole thing paints a picture. It's a lot of what that Joker movie was about, 5 years ago. Somebody mentioned Bernie Getz in the super chats here, which we'll get to in a minute. But, that movie revolves around the inciting incident of that film is the subway murder, oddly enough. And it's about, a mentally ill person who just has no infrastructure. He has no support system to go to because the society does not make that investment. And part of the veneration of Daniel Penny as a hero is in service of this very sort of frontiersman kind of narrative. I mean, this is what the right wants to push, that it just falls to the individual to protect themselves and the weak, and that don't expect any support from the system to intercept these people before it gets violent. That's not the role of the state. It's the role of the individual to protect what's theirs through violence and through force. And this serves that vision of the world very well, a vision of the world that says that this should have never happened in the first place. There were a million chances that society had to prevent this in the first place, and that if we actually gave a fuck about our own people and about human life as a society, we would have intercepted Jordan Neely long before it got to this point. That's not what they're selling. They are selling bootstraps, every man for himself, and Daniel Penny is a great, he's the perfect sort of poster child for them. Rittenhouse was too. I'm not saying I would have voted guilty on either of those juries. I would not have, but that's besides the point as far as I can see. And I think that's what you're saying too. Like, that's besides the point. The point is the cultural conversation has been really hijacked in a very, very unproductive way.
Exactly. To go out there and to try to define this as a racial incident, or to present it in a very ironically racialized way, as Piers Morgan did in your segment, where he's talking about him as a deranged lunatic.
Well, I think the reaction to this has been racialized. Yes.
It has.
Yes.
It has. The same people are saying it has nothing to do with race, or making it very much about race.
Making it pretty obviously, at least somewhat about race. Not entirely. Like I said, this whole frontier. I have to show you a Laura Ingraham video. I'll probably pull it up at the end of the show. I was almost going to include it, but it was a little off message. But it's amazing that you have two examples of vigilantism just kind of in the news. all at once. But this ultimately is it's a very right wing point of view. It's a very, very just sort of stark. Every person for themselves. That's it. Don't expect any support from the system. That's not what the system is there for. The system is there to be dismantled, and this fits that narrative very, very well. And that's why they're really touting this verdict, because they see it as a win for their side of the culture war, which it is. And I'm not saying it's a win. I would have denied them with a vote, but I don't think that this cultural conversation is the right one to be having. I think, the segment we just did is much more where we ought to be going with this.
Well, that's the last conversation they want you to have.
Exactly.
Because then you actually have to put some money into taking care of people.
Right. And look at where that money ends up getting spent now. Jails. But you haven't eliminated crazy people. It's just now instead of getting health care, they're locked in a cage.
Yeah, no, we turned our jails into our mental health services.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. 100%. All right, let's take some Rumble rants and super chats. Then we got one more segment on the day. What does the movie club do every month? Is there a way to request Beau is Afraid? It's funny, I haven't seen that one yet. I'm trying to wrestle the movie from Fools. You guys are sharp. A Jewish perspective on it could be beneficial to all. I have not seen that. That's the new Ari Aster one. That probably would not work for the movie club. First of all, the one thing we can't do on Rumble is show nudity. So I don't know if there is any of that. But I know that movie's very long, which is not conducive to a movie club. Because what we do in the movie club is we watch movies and we comment on them. It's not like a traditional screening. We put together exhibits and we comment as we go. So that would be probably a 7-hour episode if we did that one. But I will watch it, and maybe I will bring that up, because I do like Ari Aster a lot. I loved his first two films, Hereditary and Midsommar. I thought those were both great. So I do want to watch that one. Thank you for that. All right, John M. in Minnesota. Missing from that report is the fact that the cops made no attempt to revive Neely. Well, it looked like they were trying to resuscitate him in the video, didn't it? I mean, it looked like that to me, from what I saw. Being mentally ill is legal. It doesn't make you exempt from threatening innocent people. Also, when you take defense of others into your own hands, you accept bad outcomes and consequences. Thank you, Kauai Cowboy. Appreciate that. Okay. We got Miserable Lib, Texas. What bothers me is the Penny case is the hero complex vibes I get. Yes, right or not, when you step up to be the savior of the situation, there's a responsibility that comes with the consequences. I agree. I agree with that 100%. I think that is right on. Tragic example of where is the government in all this. Neely should have been cared for in mental care facility, and it shouldn't have come down to 2 civilians to defend from potential violence. Hate this tragedy. Thank you, I am the Owl. Yes, we agree with that, obviously. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Name my taco. Penny did Marine-style martial arts. You do those classes for a week at most to hopefully get a promotion, then go back to your desk job. Most military training is trash and easily forgotten. Thank you for that. Appreciate that perspective. Name my taco. We got SB over here. Thanks for the $5 on YouTube. Sorry, he obviously committed manslaughter. If any of us were in his position, we'd be in jail. He got off because he was a vet and Neely was black. So, I think that's a really interesting comment, and I do appreciate the observation, which I meant to make too, where Piers Morgan leads with, he's a war hero, right? Like all of the cultural signaling on this case, yeah, it definitely does feel like they're pumping a narrative. This was this white war hero choked this black guy to death. And it's as simple as he is a hero and this guy was trash who had it coming. Like, that's clearly the narrative, and there definitely is a racial component to that. I'm not going to deny that. And I do think, like I said, I appreciate your comment. I do think there is some evidence of negligence. The standard, though, is not whether there's some evidence, and the standard is not even do I think he was negligent. Even if I was on that jury and I was 60% sure, if I was 60% sure that Neely was criminally negligent, I still have to vote not guilty. Even if I think he was, I have to know he was. I have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was negligent. And to me, the evidence just doesn't get there. So that's all I can say to that. But I do appreciate the comment. I mean, I think, yeah, if the roles were reversed, if you swap colors out, if you swap backgrounds, yeah, you could have had a different outcome. And whether you had a different outcome in the trial or not, you certainly would have had a different conversation around this. No question in my mind. If a black veteran choked a white homeless guy to death, you think Jack Posobiec will be out calling him a hero? Not a fucking chance in hell. Not a chance in hell. So I agree with you on that. And I appreciate the comment. Higgins Wallop, thanks for the $5. The Penny case serves as a literary foil to the CEO killing case, but that's just another media coincidence. Of course. Thanks, guys. Yeah, like I said, it is a foil. Tail Slate says, relax. Bernie Getz shot his subway attackers, was acquitted of attempted murder. There was no rash of vigilantism in the aftermath. That is true. There was no Twitter. There was no Instagram in 1984. That's the one difference. That's the one thing I would say, which gives me some concern. Theater and a Fire, thanks for the $5. Capitalism and Schizophrenia, 1987. Gilles Deleuze, Felix Guattari. Is that a book or a movie recommendation? Thank you for that. Sloppy Meme says, people need to stop blaming Reagan. Jerry Brown was governor of California for 16 years and never built a single psych hospital. Well, yeah, no. I mean, look, the Democrats, the Democrats
we're big
do not have their
Democrat boosters over here.
Yeah, they do not have their hands clean.
He did what he did.
Right.
He did what he did. That's
right.
Beside the point.
Right. No, the Democrats do not have their hands clean in this, of course. Thank you, Sloppy Memes, and thank you for the extra $5. We appreciate that. Okay, we got one more segment on the day, but folks, you know, these are times where it is really useful to have a free speech platform, and Rumble is that. So we're going to read a Rumble Premium ad before we do our final segment of the day. This sponsorship is directly from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on issues like COVID, but they did. And Facebook admitted they fell to pressure, from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not cave to such pressure. They held the line for free speech, and they're attacked daily for giving shows like us a voice to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in the corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to suppress speech while Rumble is fighting to preserve it. But Rumble will not survive with brand advertisers alone since they don't get much of them. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you, but if you really believe in the fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the Rumble platform. They also have some other perks, features that you can use with that as well. So it is a cool, nifty little way to enjoy the Rumble experience even more. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are, of course, just happy if you watch us on the platform. All righty. Perfect. Let's go to our final segment of the day. Another one for the R-Man. Another one for Russell here. Russell's busy today. Quarterback and all these.
All right. Friend of show, Jay-Z. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't want to wind up in court. All right. So you might remember, speaking of Piers Morgan, he's coming up a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
So Piers Morgan did an interview with Jaguar Wright, a singer who at one time was part of the kind of whole Diddy Jay-Z scene, who has been speaking out since before Diddy got arrested, talking about some of what was going on. After he got arrested, we actually did a segment on that after Diddy got arrested, showing some of her claims about Justin Bieber and Usher being allegedly groomed. So here's some of what she said on Piers Morgan.
Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Kelly, Sean Combs have one person in common, professionally and privately. Sean Carter.
Okay, and Sean Carter, the real name of Jay-Z. Here's another clip from that interview in which she calls out both Jay-Z and Beyonce.
There's no vindication for me because for 4 years I've been screaming not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters. And the victim-making machine kept going on.
Jay-Z has been notable by his silence since these charges were brought against Diddy. Why do you think that is?
I think she just told you.
Because that's what he does. He starts little fires everywhere, forces everyone involved to go and carry water while he sneaks away without a response. That changes now, Sean.
So he very quickly heard from Jay-Z and Beyonce's lawyers and issued an apology. Interestingly, Jaguar Wright did not get such a letter because Jaguar Wright would be very happy to go to court,
Right.
in which case there'd be discovery. She'd have access to emails, to evidence. So they're not going to sue her. Piers Morgan doesn't want any part of it, so he apologized. But here we go. Jaguar Wright was talking about Diddy long before he got arrested, and she was talking about Jay-Z before this happened. Now, we don't know if this is true or not. These are only allegations, but here we go. Jay-Z accused in a civil lawsuit of raping a 13-year-old girl in 2000, along with Sean Diddy Combs. Jay-Z, the star rapper and entrepreneur, whose real name is Sean Carter, was accused in a lawsuit Sunday of raping a 13-year-old girl in 2000, allegedly along with Sean Diddy Combs. The anonymous accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, said the assault happened after she was driven to an MTV Video Music Awards after-party. The federal lawsuit was originally filed in October in the Southern District of New York, listing Combs as a defendant. It was refiled Sunday to include Carter. Texas-based attorney Tony Busby, who filed the suit, did not comment. Carter called the allegations idiotic in a lengthy statement Sunday evening and alleged that Busby was engaged in unprofessional behavior. Quote, "These allegations are so heinous in nature that I implore you to file a criminal complaint, not a civil one. Whomever would commit such a crime against a minor should be locked away. Would you not agree?" Carter said in a statement to NBC News. Yeah, he wrote that. He wrote that with the high dudgeon Shakespearean phrasing. I'm sure he wrote this. These alleged victims would deserve real justice if that were the case. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York declined to comment on whether the office is pursuing the case when shown NBC News' report on the lawsuit. Busby has filed several lawsuits in recent months. All have withheld their complainants' names, accusing Combs of assault and rape. This is the first suit in which he has named another high-profile defendant. In a statement, legal representatives for Combs called the suits shameless publicity stunts designed to extract payments from celebrities who fear having lies spread about them, just as lies have been spread about Mr. Combs. Yeah, no, everybody has a room full of lube. Who doesn't? Right. Who doesn't have 200 tubes of baby oil laying around? As his legal team has said before, Mr. Combs has full confidence in the facts and the integrity of the judicial process. In court, the truth will prevail that Mr. Combs never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor, the statement read. Federal prosecutors in New York criminally charged Combs in September with racketeering, sex trafficking, and other offenses, and he is behind bars at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center after he was denied bail for a third time last month. His trial is scheduled for May 5th. Prosecutors said in a court hearing last month that they are in the process of potentially bringing more charges against Combs in a superseding indictment. Quote, "You have made a terrible error in judgment that thinking that all celebrities are the same," Carter added in his statement Sunday. "I'm not from your world. I'm a young man who made it out of the project of Brooklyn. We don't play these types of games. We have very strict codes and honor. We protect children. The lawsuit claims...
I mean, he was at these parties, right? So, like, we don't know whether he did anything.
Yes.
We can't say that for sure. But we know... We
know
could say with
he
a great
was.
deal of
we
confidence.
know Beyonce was.
Yes.
We know J-Lo, another
we
person
protect
whose name
children.
comes up.
I mean, we could say with a great deal of confidence that they were aware of what was going on. We can't say that for certain. We could be very confident in that. These accusations, we cannot have the same confidence in. But none of this surprises me in the least.
This is what I would say about that. I've made this point before. I am about 500 degrees of separation removed from Kevin Spacey and John Travolta, and I heard about their illicit activities over 10 years before that became public.
I heard about Weinstein.
So
I didn't hear he was a rapist, but I heard he was a pervy, basically predator.
These things get around, even if you're on the periphery of the entertainment industry.
Right.
Just being on the periphery, I heard about it. Just knowing people who worked on sets.
I heard about Weinstein from two different people who did not know each other at all. And like I said, didn't hear he was a criminal, but heard he was pretty predatory. Yeah.
So the idea that Weinstein was in the dark, Oprah rather was in the dark about Weinstein,
that Jay-Z didn't know. It's ridiculous.
That's absurd.
It's
That's
absurd.
At the very least, that you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
The lawsuit claims that in 2000, when Doe was 13, Combs and Carter raped her at a house party after the MTV Video Music Awards in New York. The lawsuit said a friend dropped her off at the VMAs at Radio City Music Hall. She did not have a ticket, and she approached various limousine drivers to try to gain access to the show or an after party. One driver, the lawsuit says, told her that he worked for Combs and that she, quote, fit what Diddy was looking for. He invited her to a party after the show and told her to return to his car later in the evening after he transported Carter and Combs, the suit says. Later, the driver picked her up, the suit says, and after 20 minutes, they arrived at a white house with a U-shaped driveway, the suit says. Now, I saw one commentator pointing out she's giving a lot of detail to make her story more credible. Like, how would you know all this about a U-shaped driveway and what it looks like in there? She had to sign a document she believed was a non-disclosure agreement on arrival and did not receive a copy to enter the party, which the suit says was filled with celebrities and people doing marijuana and cocaine. She was offered a drink that made her feel, quote, woozy, lightheaded, and felt like she needed to lie down, the suit says, and she went into a room to rest. Shortly afterward, the suit says, Combs and Carter entered the room with Combs saying, "You are ready to party." That's when she alleges Carter removed her clothes, held her down, and raped her, while Combs and an unnamed female celebrity watched. She says Combs also raped her as Carter and the woman looked on. The suit says that she was able to resist being forced to perform oral sex on Combs by hitting him in the neck and that he stopped. After the alleged assault, the suit says she grabbed her clothes and left. She made her way to a gas station where she called her father, it says. The accuser is seeking unspecified damages. The lawsuit is filed under New York's Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act. Quote, "My only heartbreak is for my family," Carter said in the statement. "My wife and I will have to sit our children down, one of whom is at the age where her friends will surely see the press and ask questions about the nature of these claims and explain the cruelty and greed of people. I mourn yet another loss of innocence." That is rich. These are only allegations, folks. Quote, "Only your network of conspiracy theorists, fake psychics will believe the idiotic claims you have levied against me that, if not for the seriousness surrounding harm to kids, would be laughable," Carter added. Well, file that under what's he going to say?
Well,
oh yeah, I did that shit.
Look, I do not. I don't believe any of these denials insofar as they were not aware of what Diddy was doing at these like that's just
No way.
inconceivable. To
No, absolutely no.
Now,
way.
as for the specific offense,
for
you don't know
for
that.
decades,
but
it was Diddy's wingman for decades.
Right, and the other part of this too is like there are a lot of celebrities who get shaken down with bogus lawsuits. That's true.
Sure.
There are a lot of celebrities who can afford that, and you say, well, you see that they're rich, and so you go after their money. There's also when you enter the level of wealth of a Jay-Z or even a Sean Combs, you're talking about billionaires. These people are incredibly powerful. Jay-Z has a net worth of $2.5 billion. Diddy was up around $1 billion. I shouldn't say he's ruined now. He's still got a few $100 million in net worth, but it's significantly less than it was prior to all this. But he was up around the billionaire threshold too. Like these are very, very powerful people. These are people with a lot of contacts who can crush you in more ways than one. And so that explains why they would wait until it's in the news that they may be taken more seriously. You come out of nowhere with an accusation like this when Jay-Z is a beloved billionaire, when he's campaigning with Hillary Clinton, and you think you're going to survive that reputationally or worse, right? Yeah, I mean, that could be why it took this long. Now, again, we have to be responsible and say we don't know. These are accusations. But I feel very confident in saying that Jay-Z knew full well what a predatory scumbag Sean Combs was, and he partook in it, at least on the periphery. Not saying he did anything criminal himself, but he was well aware. There is no doubt about that in my mind.
There are a lot of allegations out there. Jaguar Wright also says that Jay-Z's pregnant mistress died 24 hours after saying she was going to go public back in 2000, 2001. These are allegations. We do not know. All I can say is that a lot of these people who had access to those circles, like bodyguards, have come out and called them out on this before the arrests. They keep getting proven right. So when you hear things like this from those people, and then all of a sudden you get a suit like this, you have to take it seriously. We don't know. These are unproven allegations. Nothing has been proven in a court of law. But it certainly does look suspicious, and there's definitely a lot of smoke around that fire.
All right. We got Michael Castillo. Thanks for the $5. May I suggest you try to have Dr. Drew on your show to address the overall mental illness crisis in our country, peace in the Middle East. Drew might be a little bit big for us.
Yeah, I don't know that he's going to...
a little bit above our weight there, but I mean, I don't know where we would begin there, but that might be a little bit of a big get for us. But thank you for the recommendation. You see, Miller.
Aren't those the F-bomb guys?
What's that?
Aren't those the F-bomb guys? I was told never to go on their show.
Who?
Joke. Where the F-bomb guys.
Oh, where? Oh, you're doing an impression of him. Oh, got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Stoop sign, crazy train story, Russ. Some years a black woman came to the store I worked at naked, bloodied, waving a wrench around. Jesus. Some ways back, a woman came into the store naked, bloodied. Jesus, that's horrible. What store? Is the store that you worked at? Wow. Insert Lisa Sliwa and or Bernard Getz joke here. There you go. Thank you. Two people brought up Getz. You got two references there. Okay. Hillary Hinton got that one. I am the owl. The ruling class allows those who are ill to suffer and cause collateral damage as a result of their illness. They could fix it and make life better for everyone, but purposely choose not to. They want chaos. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that. Violent Fembot says the right wants cops, stronger criminal justice. That's a huge part of their worldview. They praise Penny for stepping up where legal system did not, but they don't think lawlessness is ideal. Well, I mean, they seem to be celebrating this in a huge way. I think I think it serves that. It serves the idea that it's every man for themselves. That's what I think that serves. All right. What do we got? Crystal Waters says MAGA for Palestine. Thank you, Crystal Waters. Appreciate that. Miserable Lib Texas. Jay-Z's response to the allegations: would never do that to a 13-year-old. Beyonce was at least 15 when I screw her. Yeah, I've heard that I don't know what the exact history of that was. I've seen some.
They also make that allegation about Rihanna that she was trafficked.
Right.
By Jay-Z and Diddy. That's something else Jaguar Wright talks about.
Was that in a Twitter thread?
That's in her interviews
With
and
Piers
videos
Morgan?
that she's dropped. No. Now I'm not sure because you can't find the full Piers
Right.
Morgan thing anymore. They took it down. They
Right.
were afraid they were going to get sued. So you can
Right.
only find little clips like that now. But she has a lot of other stuff out online.
Right. All righty. Well, that's our show today, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you all. We will see you back here Thursday morning for some morning dew. That is when we'll see you next. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button on the way out. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. Oh, look at this. We made it. 686 likes over on YouTube. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. Great to see you all once again. We will see you back here Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. Until then, thanks very much. Be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.